The air at Storm's End tasted of salt and stormlight, as if the narrow sea itself had gathered on the battlements to bear witness. Robert Baratheon loomed above the courtyard, black hair still wind-tossed after his gallop from the meadow outside the walls. He crushed the damp onyx of his beard with a gauntleted hand, glaring at the page who stumbled toward him with a cloak of deep blue velvet. Behind Robert, the sky heaved with thunderheads, columns of slate tumbling against one another like armies in a siege. He scarcely noticed. All he saw, indeed, all he had seen since dawn, was the slender girl who dismounted between the hedges of gorse and goldenrod. Lyanna Stark, eyes wide with the clean fierceness of the north, dark hair braided back with silver ribbons borrowed from Robert's sister Cassana. She paused beneath the portcullis, breathing the unfamiliar sea wind. 1,000 memories overtook Robert in that heartbeat. The winter roses she loved, the prick of thorns as he crushed one into his fist the day he first swore she would be his, the sound of her laughter when Ned told some sly jest on the green banks of the Trident, the way she rode, reckless as any knight, leaving dust devils to mark her path. Half the court whispered that maiden Lyanna was half wild, more direwolf than lady. Robert adored that wildness. He wanted it blazing beside him for the rest of his life, unsoftened by silken chains. So when Jon Arryn had fetched both houses to the Vale and pressed parchment beneath Robert's quill, Robert had signed scarcely reading. 2 lines of ink, bold and inky black, sealed their fate. A royal dispensation for Lyanna Stark to marry Lord Robert Baratheon of Storm's End, witnessed by the hand of the king and sealed with the dire wolf and the crowned stag. It was a triumph of political theater. It was also the most reckless thing Robert had ever done. For the king, Mad Aerys himself, had not sanctioned it. Aerys's crown sat uneasily. He distrusted his son and his counselors alike, but above all he distrusted the great lords who gathered power beyond his reach. Aerys would have preferred his own match for Lyanna. Some pliant reachman, perhaps. Anything but the fiery young Storm Lord whose popularity among both small folk and minor lords threatened to eclipse that of Prince Rhaegar. Yet the ink had dried. Jon Arryn, as the king's hand, sent quiet ravens promising that the marriage would soothe ancient rivalries between North and Stormlands. Eddard Stark stood witness, solemn and resolute. And so, before Aerys could protest, the vows were spoken in the Godswood at River Run. Hoster Tully lending the weight of his name, though he grimaced at the thought of Targaryen ire. The weirwood leaves trembled blood-red as Lyanna's voice answered Robert's, and the gods themselves seemed to hush. Now the new Lady Baratheon crossed the stones of Storm's End like a shadow released from winter. Robert strode to meet her, forgetting every scrap of ceremony. He scooped her waist, spun her once beneath the looming black arch. The crowd gasped. Some cheered. Lyanna laughed, breathless, her cheeks flushed from the swift ride. Even the grim-faced Castellan Ronnet Connington cracked a smile. Yet in that joyous tableau, there flickered the first crack of lightning. A raven screaming across the battlements. Its message bore the royal seal scorched red with wax and wildfire. Aerys's fury given wings. The king demanded immediate restitution. Marriage annulled, bride returned to Winterfell. Groom sent to King's Landing to kneel and beg forgiveness. Jon Arryn counseled caution. Stannis muttered that the crown had no such power outside its own decrees. But Robert, he bellowed laughter so fierce the raven flapped away in terror. Tell Aerys to drink wildfire and choke, he said, voice echoing in the yard. Lyanna is mine. Let any man who denies it face the hammer of Storm's End. Within a fortnight, ravens brought darker rumors. Prince Rhaegar rode the King's Road with a small retinue of gold and silk-cloaked knights, bound for Storm's End ostensibly to parley, but more likely to claim the woman whose betrothal he once coveted in song and secret glance. Rhaegar's wife, Elia of Dorne, languished in childbed, yet still tongues wagged of the prince's fascination with the wolf maid from Winterfell. He had sung of her beauty at Harrenhal's tourney. The Crownlands taverns still hummed with verses praising a blue winter rose. Some in Robert's hall whispered that if Rhaegar meant to reclaim her, fire and blood would follow. Robert doubled the guards. Ned Stark remained as part of Lyanna's escort and quietly formed an honor company of northern bowmen under Sir Roderick Castle. In the echoing Shield Hall, Robert and Ned spoke long into candlelit nights, planning contingencies. They were as close as brothers, yet in those hours they glimpsed the gulf opening beneath their feet. Robert, all storm and fury, quick to speak of smashing Erisure rain to shards. Ned, cool and deliberate, seeing the cost in blood and oaths broken. Lyanna listened, saying little, until one night she seized Robert's wrist. "We cannot let him take me," she said. "But we must not deliver the realm to chaos for pride alone." Robert kissed her knuckles, promising to be as cunning as any fox. Inside, his hammer ached for battle. The prince arrived on the 23rd day of the 6th moon. Dawn bled crimson above the towers, as if some omen set the sky alight to herald the meeting. Rhaegar Targaryen rode beneath a silk canopy, his armor the color of shade-wrought steel that seemed to drink the sun. A ruby shimmered in his breastplate, echoing the gemstone glinting at his throat. Behind him marched the King's Guard, Sir Arthur Dayne foremost, dawn in hand. The Storm's End gates yawned open with reluctant groan. Robert received them in the great hall, Lyanna at his side, Ned flanking her like silent sentinel. Rhaegar dismounted, eyes the improbable violet of Valyria. When they met Lyanna's he paused, as if struck by the gale inside her. The company stilled. Thunder outside, hush within. Rhaegar removed his helm. Silver pale hair falling artfully. "My lady," he murmured, voice a song unto itself. "I come to ensure your welfare." Robert's laughter cracked like a drum. "Her welfare lies in storm and stone," he said. "You come to steal my wife." Rhaegar's gaze flicked to him with measured sadness. "You have stolen something, Lord Baratheon. Her destiny." At that Robert's blood surged. His hand twitched toward the warhammer slung at his hip. But Ned spoke first, voice low and even. "Your Highness," he said, "the vows were witnessed by the hand. The gods have joined them. Destiny is no pawn for princes or lords." Rhaegar sighed, as if weary beyond his years. "Tell me, Eddard Stark, will you blight my children's future to spare your sister turmoil? The king has sworn that this match threatens the realm's stability. Lord Tywin hears such rumors and mutters of rebellion." Dorne seethes. "I would heal the wound before it festers." "Bam?" It was Lyanna who answered. "Your Grace," she said softly, using the courtesy honorific though he was but prince. "The wound festers because some seek to possess what cannot be possessed. I am no dragon's prize. I am a free wolf maid of age to choose. And I have chosen." She took Robert's calloused hand, lifted it for all to see. The hall roared approval. Rhaegar's eyes shone not with anger but an almost wistful regret. "Then the song is ended," he murmured, turning away. A flick of his cloak, a gesture to the King's Guard, and he departed as swiftly as he had come. Yet as he passed through the arch Robert sensed a chill. Ned felt it too, that tightening in the air portending a slower, deadlier storm than any weather could brew. In King's Landing, Eris raged at the insult. The royal court trembled with rumor that the king meant to execute Jon Arryn for treason. When Ravens spoke of Arryn refusing to relinquish his custodianship of Ned Stark, Eris's new demand that Ned be offered as hostage for Lyanna's return, the Seven Kingdoms stirred as if all the old hatreds were dragons waking beneath the earth. Jon Arryn sent appeals to every corner of Westeros. "Help me resist tyranny. Defend ancient rights." In Winterfell, Lord Rickard Stark called banners. In the Vale, the mountain lords mustered, swearing fealty to Arryn's stand. The Riverlands split, Tullys for rebellion. Freys hedging every bet. Even in the Reach, young men spoke Robert Baratheon's name as though it heralded a new dawn. Still Robert refused to march first. He listened. "Gods help the realm." To Stannis' counsel. "We will build iron behind our walls," Stannis urged. "Let the king come to us. Let him spend himself on these stones. When his madness shatters against Storm's End we will ride, not as rebels but as champions of the realm he has forsaken." Renly, still a boy, crafted banners depicting a crowned stag embracing a howling wolf. The image spread among small folk like wildfire. The first blood spilled far from Storm's End. Royal men rode into the Vale seeking to seize Ned. Ned slipped away under moonlight, Arryn's falcons shielding his flight. Outside Gulltown, the Vale knights ambushed the king's men. Sir Gawain Gaunt of the King's Guard fell with a spear through lung and shoulder. His white cloak stained red traveled back to King's Landing as silent accusation. Aerys answered with fire. He commanded Lord John Arryn to send his ward Eddard Stark to the capital or see his wife Lysa flayed. Arryn refused. And thus the banners rose in earnest. War crept rather than exploded, like frost under a door. Robert rode to Bitterbridge to join Tully and Stark forces. Lyanna remained at Storm's End, pregnant, though she swore she would not be coddled. Maester Cresson feared the strain, but she only smiled, claiming the babe within thrived on turmoil as its mother did. Robert kissed her once, fiercely, tasting salt tears he would never confess to shedding. "I will finish this before snow falls," he promised. Lyanna gripped his jaw with surprising strength. "Bring me a kingdom where our child can be free." At Bitterbridge, Robert's hammer first met Rhaegar's sword. It was not yet the legendary duel of the trident, but a clash of vanguard forces probing one another on sun-drenched fields. Rhaegar rode in polished mail, rubies flashing like dragon's blood. Robert, bareheaded, roaring hammer swinging in arcs that snapped spears and crushed shields like wilted birch. They met amid a churn of hooves and steel. And for a heartbeat, the world drew silent except for their breaths. Robert struck, Rhaegar parried, sparks dancing. Twice more they exchanged blows, one like thunder, one like silver lightning, before commanders on both sides parted them, fearful that a single instant might slay future king or rebel lord, and decide the war. News of the duel traveled quicker than the ravens. Songs sprouted along every road, each telling a different truth. That Robert dented Rhaegar's breastplate. That Rhaegar grazed Robert's brow and drew stag blood. That Lyanna's unborn child kicked at the moment steel met iron. Whichever tale reached Aerys' ears, it drove him deeper into madness. Pyromancers stalked the Red Keep, whispering of caches beneath Sept and Baelor's vault fit to burn the city thrice over. Varys flitted through shadows, his riddles pointing in all directions yet revealing nothing. Jaime Lannister watched, white cloak pristine, but his lion's eyes narrowed with every new paranoia. Then tragedy struck at Storm's End. Not flames, but fever. A chill wind off the sea carried a sickness none could name. Lyanna succumbed within days. Shockingly sudden. One morning she stood on the ramparts, hair whipping like banners, and by nightfall she shivered in silk sheets, skin pallid as frost. The maesters bled her, poulticed her, prayed. The babe survived the first convulsion, but not the second. Within 2 nights, both mother and child were lost. Stannis wrote Robert, with uncharacteristic gentleness. The missive reached him outside Maidenpool. When Robert finished reading, he crushed the parchment until his knuckles cracked, then walked into the black hush beyond the campfires. Soldiers heard the roar of a wounded animal, hammer smashing rocks until dawn. From that sunrise forth, Robert spoke little. His eyes hardened to iron, and his ale-sodden laughter vanished. He paced like a caged bear, seeking the faintest excuse to unleash his wrath. Ned feared for his friend's soul. He tried to speak of grief and remembrance, but Robert would only whisper, "Targaryen blood did this." Whether plague or coincidence mattered not. Robert's mind forged the world into a single blade pointed at dragonkind. The campaign that followed became legend even as it unfolded. At Stonehelm, Robert shattered Crownlander lines, slaying Lord Felton Flowers in single combat and capturing 3 dragon banners drenched in gore. At Duskendale, he overran the harbor, burning 7 ships of the royal fleet to cinders. Ned won quieter victories, liberating towns, forbidding looting, binding small folk to their cause with coin and justice. Together they advanced, a hammer and a quieting snow. Rhaegar gathered loyalists at the Trident, the river that had once shimmered with tourney pageantry when he crowned Lyanna queen of love and beauty. Word reached him of her death. Those who stood close say he turned whiter than bone, lips trembling, tears unashamed. Yet he donned his armor still, for duty now demanded retribution not as suitor, but as prince of the realm. He would end the conflict swiftly, lest Eris do something irreversible in his terror. The armies converged under lowering skies. Rain fell like swords, turning ground to treacherous mud. Robert rode into battle with a cloak of midnight blue, the last garment Lyanna stitched for him, fluttering like storm surf behind. Ned kept pace on the left flank. Jon Arryn commanded reserves. Hoster Tully held the ford. Across the river, banners of the dragon and the rapt red sun of Dorne clustered like a bruise. And at the center, jeweled as a god of war, sat Rhaegar. So began the greatest duel in living memory. They found each other amid the chaos, as if destiny carved a corridor through pikemen and cavalry for that one meeting. Robert shouted Lyanna's name. Rhaegar whispered it. Their weapons collided with a clang that drowned thunder. Blow after blow they traded, Robert's hammer slamming like siege engines, Rhaegar's blade weaving graceful arcs that drew blood even as it deflected iron. Witnesses spoke of time slowing, of sparks flying into the rain and refusing to extinguish, setting the air wreathed in orange dragonfire. 3 times Robert staggered, twice Rhaegar reeled, each refused to yield. At last Robert's hammer struck the ruby on Rhaegar's breast. The gem exploded, scattering red shards across the water. The prince's breastplate crumpled inward. He sank to his knees, sword slackening. Robert raised the hammer once more but paused, seeing in Rhaegar's eyes not malice but grief mirrored. The pause lasted half a heartbeat, long enough for Arthur Dayne to charge. Dawn held high. Ned Stark intercepted, ice sweeping up to block the pale sword. Steel screeched. While they grappled, Robert's hammer descended. With a sound like the tolling of a giant bell, it crushed prince and armor both, shattering ribs and life together. Rhaegar Targaryen died beneath the weight of a grieving man's fury. The river ran red. Crown forces broke. Dayne, seeing the prince fall, fought his way to the body, dragged it from the mud, and with the Kingsguard carved a path back across the ford, leaving hundreds dead. But the war was effectively won. No heir of royal charisma remained to rally the loyalists. Eris's madness blossomed in full bloom, ordering wildfire caches lit. Jaime Lannister, based with the pyromancer's torches at the Septi, unsheathed his sword and slew his king to save a city. By the time Robert's host reached King's Landing, dragon banners lay trampled within the gates and Tywin's lions prowled the keep. Robert ascended the Iron Throne not as conqueror, but as widower. His first decree honored Lyanna as queen who never reigned. Crystal tears were embedded along the hilt of the hammer displayed beside her statue in the Red Keep's Godswood. The Stormlands cheered. The North mourned. The 7 kingdoms, exhausted, accepted the stag in place of dragon. But a shadow lay over Robert's reign from its first dawn. He wed to secure allies. Cersei Lannister, whose beauty smoldered like molten gold. But his heart never left the crypts of Winterfell. Feasts provided no solace. Wine tasted of ashes. The babe he lost haunted every lullaby in the royal nursery. Ned Stark, named Hand, governed with quiet honor, soothing wounds of war, yet he never forgot the price of vengeance. He visited the white tomb of Prince Rhaegar, placed winter roses there each year on the anniversary of Bitterbridge. Robert never asked why. Perhaps he feared the answer. Across the sea, Illyrio Mopatis whispered of dragon's blood still alive. Rhaegar's children spirited to safety, their mother silently vowing retribution. In Dorne, Aelius' brother Oberyn sharpened his spear and dreams of justice. Far in the north, the uneasy others stirred at forgotten whispers. Thus did marriage meant to unite realms, instead ignite a chain of events none could foresee. Robert Baratheon won his crown but lost his joy. The realm knew peace, but thin as ice in early thaw. And late at night, when torches guttered and courtiers slept, the king would pace the solar, hammer across his lap, staring into embers that crackled like breaking rubies, hearing Lyanna's laughter in every flame until dawn chased the ghosts away. The bells of King's Landing tolled for dawn, though the sky outside the high windows of the Red Keep remained bruised with remnants of night. Robert Baratheon sat the Iron Throne for the first meeting of his council, as true crowned king, and to each man gathered before him, the new monarch seemed carved from a darker stone than the lord who had once laughed beneath the towers of Storm's End. His broad shoulders bore a black doublet, sewn with a lone silver stag. His restless hands drummed on the hilts of the forged blades that spiked up around him. Somewhere, far back in the recesses of the hall, torchlight caught the edge of a warhammer leaned against a pillar, his silent reminder of the cost of victory. Lord Tywin Lannister stood tallest among the counselors, gold lions glittering on scarlet samite. Beside him paced Grand Maester Pycelle, beard wagging with each deferential dip of his chin. Jon Arryn, now Lord Protector of the realm until the Queen produced an heir, rested both palms atop an ivory-headed cane. Age had stooped him, yet flint remained in his blue Arryn eyes. Ned Stark wore the Hand's badge reluctantly, the woven fingers of that brooch stark against the wolf-gray of his wool. Varys moved like mist at the fringes, every footstep a whisper of silk. And Sir Barristan Selmy, Lord Commander newly confirmed, watched them all with knightly caution. Robert's voice cracked the hush. The realm bleeds coin. The crown's ledgers show debts deeper than Blackwater Bay, while grain stores lie empty from crownlands to the neck. What answer do my lords propose? Tywin spoke first, soft but resonant. Your Grace, Casterly Rock will extend a line of credit sufficient to refill the granaries and settle immediate arrears with the Iron Bank. In return, the Rock asks only concessions on certain tariffs long burdensome to western ports. His gaze flicked toward Ned like a blade. Ned bristled. And leave the small folk in the north paying more for southern iron than they can earn in a season. No. Tywin's smile cut thin. Better higher tariffs than empty bowls, Lord Stark. Winter is coming, they say. Robert let their words clatter before lifting a mailed hand. Enough. My people will not starve, and neither will they bend to the lion's paw. I will send envoys to the Reach for grain. Lords Redwine and Hightower grow fat on harvests untouched by war. As for our debts, the Lannisters may name a sum. I will repay it with taxes levied on luxury trade. Silks, jewels, Dornish wines, everything the court devours while orphans scrape gutter bread. Make it so, Ned. Now. Tywin's eyes narrowed, but he inclined his head. As your Grace commands. Robert dismissed the council then, refusing even a cup of morning ale. He strode from the throne room into corridors walled with dragon skulls, their hollow sockets following him like accusation. Each grim mask reminded him of Lyanna's still face upon the bier, lips that would never again curl in feral laughter. Rage fluttered beneath his ribs, a caged storm that no victory parade could quell. He found solace, oddly, in the nursery newly prepared for heirs not yet conceived. Cersei waited there amid a ring of carved cradles, golden hair spilling like sunlight across midnight velvet. She knelt by a small lion plush that court craftsman had made, arranging its paws just so. At the sound of Robert's step, she rose. Smile practiced. Good morrow, husband. Her green eyes regarded him as if measuring the width of the world she intended to rule through him. Robert grunted reply, gaze sweeping the silent cradles. In his mind they filled with specters, dark-haired babes carried from the birthing bed lifeless, as Lyanna's had been. He turned away. I ride to the Kingswood. Boars plague the outlying farms. Best the king show he protects his folk. Cersei's mouth tightened. Your council needs you. Attending numbers in ledgers and shipments of grain is no less kingly than hunting. Besides, you swore the northern dead would have a funeral pyre, and you have yet to light it. He heard only nagging. He saw only judge. Bed a huntsman, if you wish a clerk for a husband. He growled, and left her with her empty cradles. In Sunspear, Oberyn Martell leaned against a sandstone balcony, watching red desert bleed into a copper dusk. Below, the water gardens rang with children's laughter, but Oberyn's thoughts curled round a colder echo. Elia's final scream in the Red Keep, and the cries of her babes crushed beneath Lannister gauntlets. The news of Rhaegar's fall had reached Dorne long before the Raven's sealed scroll delivered Elia's death, and yet grief had not dulled with time. It had sharpened into a spear as sleek as the weapon he now oiled with fragrant sand snake venom. Prince Doran's gout-swollen feet shuffled over mosaic tile behind him. "Brother," Doran murmured, "war has ended. Let us not kindle new flames when the realm still smolders." "No." Oberyn's laugh was a hiss. "War ended. My sister's bones argue otherwise. The lion sits the iron throne, the stag wears the crown, and what does the sun receive but ashes?" Doran laid a hand on Oberyn's shoulder. "Elias' children are gone. So the tales insist. But tales are often lies. If even a spark of Targaryen blood survived, would you endanger it with rash revenge?" Oberyn stiffened. "If they live, they deserve a kingdom raised upon the deaths of those who wronged them. If they died, justice must still be paid in Lannister blood." "Mendosan." Doran's sigh mingled with the twilight breeze. "Patience. Vengeance is a dish best served cold, they say in the free cities. We will wait. We will gather allies like grains of sand. And when the time is right, Dorne will strike. Not as a lone viper, but as a storm of spears." Oberyn said nothing, yet the desert wind carried his unspoken oath. Someday the mountains would march, and Lannister gold would melt under Martell's sun. Across the narrow sea, Illyrio Mopatis's manse in Pentos glittered with lanterns despite the late hour. In a secret chamber beneath painted ceilings, a boy of 5 and 10 sparred with a Braavosi water dancer. Each patter of wooden swords echoed like distant drums. The youth's hair was silver gold, his eyes a deep indigo, yet his features bore haunting echoes of both Targaryen and Martell. He moved with princely grace, pivoting to slip a strike and answer with a tap to the dancer's shoulder. "Good," murmured Sir Willem Darry from a cushioned chair nearby. Again, but faster. The boy, young Aegon, last dragon, nodded. Sweat beaded at his temples, but fire blazed in his gaze. He feinted left, rolled beneath the Braavosis counter, and flicked his blade against the man's ribs. A perfect touch. Illyrio clapped from the doorway. "Bravo." Soon the wolves and lions in Westeros will quake at the return of their rightful king. Sir Willem's brows drew. Aegon will return when it is safe, when lords stand ready to raise his banner. Until then he is Griff, a sellsword squire, nothing more. Illyrio smiled through perfumed whiskers. "Word from Westeros is promising, my old friend." The usurper king wallows in mourning. His hand strains to hold realm and purse together. The queen's family counts coin and enemies in equal measure. And across all 7 kingdoms, small folk whisper that dragons once saved them from darkness. They may welcome a dragon yet again. Then Willem stood. Limping, Winterfell's spears had lamed him, yet stubborn loyalty kept him upright. "Promise less, Pentoshi. One mistake and Aegon meets the fate of Rhaenys, of his namesake father. We will wait until Varys sends the word." The spider weaves patiently. Illyrio's smile cooled. "As you wish. Patience, then." Beneath his pleasantry, schemes spun like gossamer. Ned Stark's first months' hand weighed heavier than the wall's ancient ice. He walked the streets of King's Landing in plain cloak after dusk, listening to common tongues as they cursed Lannister greed. Tyrell levies, Dornish vengeance, and northern snowfall rumored on distant winds. In Flea Bottom, children begged soldiers for scraps. On the Street of Steel, smiths hammered at rusted helms from the rebellion, mending them for new skirmishes sure to come. Ned's mind replayed the council's arguments. Grain, debts, tariffs. These were wounds that needed stitching lest the kingdom bleed anew. On one such night he visited Chataya's brothel, not for carnal sport, but to question a girl whose lover served in the city watch. There he found Jon Arryn seated in a candlelit alcove, speaking softly to a doe-eyed redhead whose bastard babe nestled at her breast. Jon's expression tightened at Ned's arrival. When the girl excused herself, the hand of the king leaned close. "There are whispers," he said. "Whispers that certain children in this city share bloodlines they ought not share." Ned frowned. "You speak in riddles, in truths too heavy to voice openly. If I am right, the king must know, but gently, gently, or the realm fractures anew. Ned promised aid, though uncertainty gnawed him. He returned to the Red Keep and found Cersei on a terrace, overlooking the moonlit Blackwater. Her green silk gown rippled like serpent scales. "Lord Stark," she greeted without warmth. "Still prowling the gutters with rats and whores." "Learning what the court pretends not to hear," he answered. "The people suffer. They always suffer," she said with a shrug. "Change the name of the king, the small folk still starve." Ned met her gaze. A just ruler might lessen their suffering. Her lips curved. "And who shall teach Robert justice? You? You who served a rebel lord who murdered a prince? Spare me northern sermons." Ned's hand brushed the longsword at his hip. He thought of Lyanna's bones, of Rhaegar's smashed ruby, of the unborn child who would never join winter to storm. "May the gods grant you a healthy son soon, your grace. The realm needs hope." She laughed, but the sound held little mirth. Robert found no solace in the hunt. The boar he slew in Kingswood squealed like a dying infant. Its blood drenched his arms to the elbow. He stared at the carcass, seeing in those black bristled haunches the pale curves of the wife he had lost. He vomited ale into the leaves, wiped his mouth, and called for more wine. When his party returned, drunk songs echoed through the gatehouse. But Robert's own voice fell silent. That night, Stannis approached Ned in the solar. "My brother festers," Stannis said without preamble. "He drinks, he beds whores, he spurns his duties. The court corrodes. We must act." "Act how?" Ned asked. "He is our king. He may yet ruin the realm. The treasury empties each day. Tywin buys influence faster than we fill coffers. And whispers tell me the queen's belly quickens, not with the kin's seed but her twins. Jon Arryn hunts proof." Cold slid down Ned's spine. Jon must be careful. Stannis' jaw flexed. When has caution saved any of us? If Robert sits a cuckoo's chick upon that throne, all we fought for falls to mockery. Watch the royal children as they come. They will tell their own tale. Now. Ned wanted to deny it, but memory pricked him. The slight curl at the boy Joffrey's lip, something too perfect in his hair of spun gold, nothing of black or brown. He prayed to the old gods that suspicion lied. Greyjoy sails unfurled the Kraken a moon later. Balon of Pike proclaimed himself king of the Iron Islands, seizing Stone Tree and Widows watch in raids as swift as gull dive. Euron's silence burned fishing hamlets. Victarion's iron victory captured merchants fat with arbor wine. Before King's Landing could muster a fleet, the Ironborn clutched half the western coast in salt-soaked fist. Robert answered, "At last," like the Thunder God songs claimed him to be. He called banners from Reach and Riverlands, rode at their head with Stannis on sea and Ned commanding vanguard ashore. 7 great battles hammered the Kraken back into its isles. At Fair Isle, Ned's cavalry stormed the beach, hooves churning foam, while archers on galleys rained ash-fletched shafts. At Seaguard, Jason Mallister shot Euron's captain through the eye. At Pike's gates, Robert breached Balon's wall, bare-headed, swinging hammer, until Kraken men buckled under stag fury. Theon, youngest son of Balon, knelt in salt and blood, sword across palm. Ned took him hostage, his heart heavy. Another boy torn from home, another life shaped by war's ruthless balance. When the fighting ended, Robert stood upon a battlement of pike facing the sea. Salt wind whipped tears from his lashes. He refused to acknowledge. Ned approached. "You fought bravely." Robert's laugh came raw. "I fought to forget. And when the hammer stills, the ghosts howl louder." He raised his war-scarred hand toward the horizon where gulls wheeled. "Sometimes I think I should have let the sea take me, or should have died at Rhaegar's blade and spared all this." "You did not," Ned said. "So you must live. For the realm. For the memory of those who cannot." Robert's shoulders slumped. "I can live, but I cannot live well." He turned away, already searching for a cask of ale. In King's Landing, twin shadows crept across Petyr Baelish's ledger-strewn chambers. Varys materialized by the hearth. Littlefinger reclined with a cup of sweet arbor gold. Troubling tidings, Lord Petyr, Varys purred. The Lord of the Vale digs where serpents nest. Should fangs find flesh, the queen will be most displeased, and displeasure breeds opportunity. Littlefinger's smile flickered. Opportunity always glitters where power trembles, my dear eunuch. I have investments in both sunlight and shadow. Tell me, if Jon Arryn were to take a bad cough, one beyond Pycelle's leeches, who might rise as Robert's most trusted guide? Varys laced fingers. Why, Lord Stark stands poised, though he pines for his frozen north, yet the queen might press for her father or one of those Tyrell whelps. Petyr's eyes gleamed candlelight. Chaos is a ladder, Varys. Let them all climb. I will sell each rung. He toasted the air. To coughs and cures. Jon Arryn never reached his 50th name day. Fever gripped him within a fortnight of returning to the capital from the Iron Islands. Pycelle dosed him with milk of the poppy. Yet the hand grew weaker, voice rasping a single phrase. The seed is strong. Before darkness closed. The city rang with bells for the second funeral of a king's right hand in 2 years. Cersei's tears at the bier looked convincing even to Ned until he caught Varys watching her, owl-eyed. Later the spider whispered, "Grief sits oddly on a queen who never visited the sickroom." Ned's suspicions rekindled, but proof lay buried with Jon Arryn. Robert named Ned Hand again, this time with reluctance on both sides. "You keep me honest, Ned," he said, breath reeking of wine. "Too honest, maybe." Ned bowed, knowing refusal would wound friendship and realm alike. "I will serve for as long as duty demands." Duty proved demanding indeed. Cersei's firstborn son toddled through court, golden-curled, sullen, quick to cruelty. Joffrey died. Next came Myrcella, sweet as apple blossom, then Tommen, plump and mild. Not one bore a hint of Robert's black hair or deep-set blue eyes. Ned remembered Stannis' warning. He studied keep records of Baratheon heritage and found not a single golden-haired child in 300 years. The truth lay stark. These children were born of incest, the seed of Jaime Lannister. Jon Arryn had died for this knowledge. Ned confronted Cersei beneath the still-sleeping weirwood planted for Lyanna in the God's Wood of Maegor's Holdfast. Moonlight painted her features in frosted silver. "Your children are not Robert's," he said. "Leave the city with them, while you can." She regarded him like a viper might a mouse. "And if I refuse?" "Robert will learn," Ned vowed. Her smile chilled the blood. "When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die, Lord Stark. There is no middle ground." Ned left convinced he could persuade Robert to set aside the false heirs and name Stannis rightful successor. But Robert rode on a hunt in the Kingswood that morrow, against Ned's counsel, and Cersei's cousin Lancel saw to the wineskin. The boar Robert cornered gored him through and spilled his life upon leaf-strewn earth. When Ned reached the bedside, Robert's eyes already glazed. He squeezed Ned's hand, voice a torn whisper. "Promise me, protect the realm. Keep my boy safe." His breath rattled. In death, tears traced his cheeks, perhaps for Lyanna or the unborn son they never knew. In the chaos that followed, Ned clutched Robert's last parchment, naming him protector until the rightful heir came of age. Stannis, by law. But Joffrey claimed the throne, and Sir Barristan, bound to the crown, hesitated. Ned sought allies. Renly first. Renly urged swift seizure of power. "Strike now. Bring me my dukes and we'll take the city this night." Ned refused to spill city blood. That decision doomed him. Littlefinger promised the city watch. Varys promised ravens to Dragonstone. On the morrow, Ned marched to the throne room with Robert's seal. The gold cloaks turned, steel hissed, and Janos Slint's blade touched Ned's neck. Littlefinger whispered, "I did warn you not to trust me." Joffrey ordered Ned seized and declared him traitor. The throne room roared approval or horror in equal measure. Cersei's smile glimmered victorious. Ned Stark knelt in chains where once Rhaegar's rubies had scattered. Word raced north along the King's Road faster than ravens. At Winterfell, Robb Stark slammed a mailed fist on map-strewn table. At River Run, Catelyn wept above the river where trout leapt. At the Eyrie, Lysa clutched her son and whispered of curses. At the twins, Walder Frey counted futures in wrinkled hands. Banners were called. Wolves, trout, flayed men, tridents, even roused krakens answered, for Balin sensed chaos ripe for ironborn raids anew. Robb marched south with river lords and great John Umber's bellowing host. The Blackfish rode at his side. Theon Greyjoy rode behind, eager to prove worth. In the Whispering Wood they captured Jaime Lannister. At the Green Fork they smashed Stafford's levies. Songs called Robb the Young Wolf. Yet each victory tasted ash to him, while Ned wasted in red keep cells. Meanwhile Renly fled with Sir Loras and half the Stormbanners, claiming kingship by popularity and the alleged will of the Smallfolk. Stannis, at Dragonstone, called him usurper and employed Melisandre of Asshai to birth shadow and flame. Within the capital, Sansa Stark prayed daily before the Sept statues, pleading for mercy while Joffrey mocked her tears. Arya vanished into flea-bottom grime. Sword needle, clutched beneath ragged cloak. Varys' whispering birds traced her flight, but cawed no alarm. A new player's survival amused the spider. Cersei reigned as regent. Tywin gathered 50,000 Westermen along the Trident, grinding villages to dust. The realm now had 4 kings, and in far Pentos, Illyrio toasted Aegon with spiced wine. 5, perhaps, he whispered. Winter deepened. White ravens flew from the citadel, announcing the season's true onset. At Castle Black, Lord Commander Jeor Mormont sent riders into haunted forest and saw none return. Ghosts walked in ice-sheened darkness. Blue eyes burned where once beat hearts. Samwell Tarly, quill shaking in frost-nipped fingers, copied ancient journals that spoke of Azor Ahai and a prince that was promised. He wondered which war mattered more, the one of Iron Thrones or the one of walking death. In Storm's End, gales rattled narrow arrow slits. Stannis' Red Priestess birthed a shadow assassin that stole into Renly's bright silk pavilion. Renly died with disbelief frozen upon lips, peach still uneaten on platter. His Stormlords bent knee to Stannis or fled in terror. The coral crown of Renly cracked like eggshell. The realm's count of kings fell by 1. In Riverlands, Robb learned of Renly's death and Ned's pending trial. His mother urged negotiations. His bannermen snarled for war. Robb rode alone one night, among whispering trees, clutching a letter from Balin, who offered alliance if Robb relinquished Seaguard. Robb penned refusal and cast it on campfire coals. In glowing embers he saw shapes, direwolves devouring a lion, kraken strangling wolf, a wildfire crown burning all. He shivered though flames blazed. The day of Ned Stark's judgment dawned red as fresh slit throat. The courtyard before the great sept thronged with spectators. Joffrey reclined on the iron throne carried out upon a dais, crown heavy on flaxen curls. Cersei and Tywin sat flanking. Sansa knelt at the foot of the stairs, pale as snow. Ned emerged gaunt yet unbroken, escorted by gold cloaks. Above, fingers of smoke from flea-bottom chimneys curled like portent. Sir Ilyn Payne waited with Valyrian blade. Ned's eyes found Sansa's. He knew what mercy demanded. He confessed treason, declared Joffrey rightful king, begged the court's clemency for daughters and men. The crowd hissed and murmured. Joffrey's lips twisted. My mother bids me let Lord Stark live as brother of the Night's Watch, but my grandfather reminds me traitor's blood is leech upon realm. I am the king. I will show strength. Sir Ilyn, bring me his head. Cersei's hand shot out. Joffrey, sweetling, reconsider. But the boy king only savored the hush that followed. I want to hear him scream. The swing of ice ended words forever. A hush fell heavy as snowfall. In that silence, something broke across the 7 kingdoms more final than steel. Honor itself seemed to bleed from the stones. Northern men howled. Sansa fainted. Arya, hidden in crowd, bit her lip until blood tasted copper in despair. Varys closed his eyes. Littlefinger watched the spurt with avid attention. News reached Robb at Ashmark 2 days hence, borne by raven with blood-dabbed feathers. He wept on his knees before mended sword, then rose and tore the parchment into winter wind. "I will take King's Landing or die," he vowed. King's Landing braced. Stannis moved up the Blackwater in fleet of hardened pine. Tywin raced east from Harrenhal, Jaime prisoner in wagon. Dorne waited, poised. Balon struck Deepwood Motte. The song of Westeros had become a cacophony of war. On a rain-swept night, Maester Luwin bent over scrolls in Winterfell's solar, when Bran Stark dreamt of a three-eyed crow. Wolves howled beyond the walls. Summer lightning illuminated an army of flayed men banners on the horizon. Far north, beyond Eastwatch, Qhorin Halfhand glimpsed figures of ice gathering, and he sent Jon Snow and wildling woman Ygritte on mission through Skirling Pass to learn truths older than crowns. In Pentos, Aegon took ship. Griff dyed his hair darker, assumed sell-sail guise, but the prince wore his past like second skin. Across the hold, a young girl with silver hair watched him. Daenerys, last child of King Aerys, wed in secret to Hedge Knight to mask her lineage. When she looked upon Aegon, she saw at once brother, cousin, and promise. Their shared blood thrummed like dragon song lost. Beneath deck planks, Illyrio's chests brimmed with coin, scrolls, and 3 dragon eggs petrified but warm. As storms herded clouds over the narrow sea, so too did fate herd these scattered heirs toward collision. The realm trembled under Boykin, under storms of fire and ice. In taverns from Old Town to White Harbor, minstrels sang the old lay of Harrenhal, wherein Rhaegar crowned Lyanna, queen of love and beauty. But now they changed the verses. Lyanna's ghost walked northern snows, screaming for justice. Robert's sorrow forged hammers that hammered realm into ruin. The dragon wolf babe who never drew breath haunted every lullaby. In silent cells beneath the Red Keep, Sansa Stark prayed to the Seven. Her whispered pleas slipped through cracks until even stone seemed to weep. In black salt spray over Pike, Theon wrestled a kraken's twin call. Wolf brotherhood and ironborn blood. Oaths spiraled like torn banners, each thread fraying. Yet beyond man's turmoil, deeper winds stirred. In caverns beneath Dragonstone, Melisandre burned leeches whose blood cried names. Joffrey, Balon, Robb, and shadow twisted upward across coiling smoke. In the Frostfangs, White Walkers traced runes of frost on dead earth, their silent command raising ranks of whites to march south when snows deepened. Ravens everywhere flew restless, their eyes glinting black prophecy. On a ridge above the Trident's misted water, Jaime Lannister in fetters gazed at rubies glimmering in mud from years past, relic of a duel that rewrote destiny. He wondered how many more lives one jewel could cost. And in a forgotten crypt beneath Winterfell, Lyanna Stark's stone effigy lay carved with winter roses, but her bronze eyes seemed almost to blink as the candle Robb placed there guttered. For a breath, it seemed the wolf maid might rise, whisper to her nephew Bran's dreams, tell him of promises unkept, of songs unfinished. The air grew cold. The candle died. Darkness embraced secrets yet to be sung. So the realm balanced on knife edge, each man's grief and pride and hunger, another gust upon the blade. And somewhere across the sea, a dragon's egg cracked subtly in candle heat, a single fissure glowing ember red, small silent herald of a fire the Seven Kingdoms had half forgotten and half feared all their days. A wind from the east carried the promise of storm across the narrow sea, rattling the rigging of the Cogstorm Dancer as it crested the slate-green swells. Aegon, still called Griff to any who might care to pry, clung to the ship's rail and scented the brine-rich air as though it were prophecy. Behind him, Jon Connington, broad-shouldered despite the silver at his temples, paced in a soldier's restless circle. Below decks, Sir Willem Darry coughed blood into a linen rag, but it was the rasp of destiny that haunted them all. Home, at last. The spray tasted of an old song half remembered, and each droplet seemed to whisper of iron thrones and cities built for dragons. They made landfall on the cape beneath Storm's End at dusk. Connington knelt to press his palm to the dark sand, as if by touch alone he could swear fealty anew to the realm that had once cast him out. Storm's End towered above on its gnarled cliff spur, but they would not yet announce themselves to Stannis Baratheon, stubborn lord turned would-be king who now brooded behind those walls. Instead they rode north through starlit fields, 7 companions cloaked as hedge knights. The boy who would be king wore plain boiled leather, yet the weight of crown and prophecy settled on his narrow shoulders each time a village lantern illuminated his Targaryen violet eyes. Word traveled faster than hoofbeats. By the time they crossed the Wendwater, a ragged trio of reachmen petitioned to join their company. By the time they skirted Bitterbridge, 30 sellswords flew a black banner striped with red to echo ancient Blackfire colors, though the sword itself was lost to myth. Aegon listened to their oaths, voice still clumsy with youth yet already carrying the cadence of kingliness. Connington watched, proud and afraid in equal measure. Far to the west, Robb Stark marched as well, though winter mud sucked at his horse's fetlocks, and every mile felt heavier than the last. Since his father's death, the young wolf had strung one victory upon another. Whispering Wood, Riverrun's relief, the twin hammer stroke that smashed Adam Marbrand's vanguard at the stone mill. But for each triumph some fresh grief stalked close behind. His sisters remained captives, Sansa in gilded cage, Arya vanished like smoke. And with every battle won, the realm seemed to sprout 2 new foes. Balon's reaving krakens choking the western shore, Stannis' Southron zealots prowling the crown lands, and now tales of some dragon prince come again with sellsword host. Edmure Tully laughed it off. Ghosts make poor generals. But Catelyn Stark heard in such whispers the pulse of an age renewing itself with fire. She felt the old gods stirring in their weirwood hearts, uneasy. Robb's army, swollen by riverlords and northern spears, reached the twins long after sunset beneath a sickle moon. Lord Walder received them with twitching courtesy, for his brood had devoured every crumb of gossip. That Robb meant to wed a Westerling girl for love, spurning the Frey bride once promised. All through the feast, harp music tried to drown the mutter of affront, but the air itself dripped tension. Yet when dawn bled gray over the green fork, Robb rode out with crossing granted, banners snapping crisp in winter wind. He never saw Lord Walder's smile as thin as a skinning blade, never heard Roose Bolton whisper to a Frey daughter that some debts need blood for payment. The twins' portcullis groaned shut behind the last outrider like a tombstone grinding into place. In King's Landing, wildfire drums still vibrated along the quays where sand had failed to smother every green-flamed ember of Stannis' shattered fleet. The Blackwater victory left half the city charred and the other half starving, yet Joffrey basked in mock sunlight of his own vanity. Each day Sir Meryn Trant escorted the kingling along the battlements, so he could wave stag and lion standards toward the desolation that proved his might. Tyrion Lannister, scarred near blind in one eye from the chain's cruel lash, had been pushed to small council's fringes the moment Tywin rode through the gates. Now the imp drifted from counting house to wine cellar, taking stock of ruin while his father tightened golden fingers round every lever of governance. Varys slithered through corridors in slippers that made no sound, gathering whispers as fireflies into a jar. One spark glowed brighter than the rest, a raven from Gulltown intercepted by a spider's bird, its parchment-naming ship sighted off Massey's Hook under unfamiliar sigil. Black sword on red stripes. The eunuch tucked the message beneath lavender robes, humming a Volantine lullaby. A new player always pleased him. Chaos, after all, remained his favorite stew. He found Tyrion in the Tower of the Hand, nose buried in ledgers. "My lord," Varys cooed, "I bring tidings of potential, opportunity." Tyrion did not glance up. "Does this opportunity wear armor or petticoats?" "Both, perhaps, before the dance is done. A boatload of exiles lands upon our shores and calls itself dragon. Should the lions bear claws, or should we let stag and kraken feel the first bite?" Tyrion rubbed the bridge of his scarred nose. "Father will rally Westermen. Stannis still harrows the Reach. Another warfront is the last thing we need. Therefore it is surely the thing we shall have." A faint smile curved the spider's lips. "Wise as ever, my lord. I thought you might relish forewarning. Forewarn me of something useful. Does this dragonling breathe real flame?" "Bah." "Not yet," Varys said, and glided away before the dwarf could pry deeper. South of Storm's End, Melisandre watched the tide recede and whispered to the sea about shadows and kings. Stannis paced the tide line like some lean, starved wolf. The Blackwater defeat gnawed his soul raw, Yet the red woman's fire visions insisted his hour had not passed. She placed a hand to his breastplate, feeling the thrum beneath. Iron will bruised but unbroken. Azor Ahai was reborn in salt and smoke. She told him, wood and water cannot deny destiny forever. Stannis' mouth twisted. Prophecies win no battles without swords. Half my fleet rots. My soldiers hunger. My enemies multiply each night. Where is R'hllor's mercy in that? Mercy is for the weak, she replied. You will have strength. Into his gauntlet she pressed a leech plump with royal blood drawn from Edric Storm, Robert's natural son. One by one they fed leeches to Brazier Flame, and Melisandre named king after king. Joffrey Baratheon, Balon Greyjoy, Robb Stark. Black smoke curled heavenward as if to write each name across the indifferent stars. Upon the Iron Islands, Balon stood atop the sea tower of Pike watching a gale chew whitecaps to rags. Crow's Eye Euron had returned from his exile with sails of strange black, bringing queer horns said to summon krakens from the deep. Victarion distrusted his elder brother's sorcery but could not dispute the Silence's haul of gold and captive merchants. Balon's ambition swelled alongside those tides. The mainland war had left coasts undefended. He boasted, thus the islands would seize the trident all the way to Seaguard. Theon, eager to prove iron blood, sailed with Dagmar Cleftjaw to take Winterfell itself from Stark women and children left behind. Thus betrayal rode with every oarstroke back toward the snows of his foster childhood. Winterfell's walls had watched kings rise since the Age of Heroes, but never had they beheld such night as descended when Theon slipped through the postern, with dogs yapping joyously to greet him. Bran greeted his foster brother with a broken boy's smile, little Rickon clutching Shaggy Dog's fur. Maester Luwin offered Theon hot broth by hearth. Within a fortnight, the broth cooled to blood. Men in Ironborn mail filled the great hall with reek of salt and smoke, and Winterfell became a hostage of Kraken whim. Hodor's gentle giant soul wept at the lash. Meera Reed snarled like marsh cat, and in the God's Wood the weirwood's red leaves trembled as if some deeper power had stirred from root-bound slumber. Theon's rule lasted as long as a frost rose under noon sun. Ramsay Snow, bastard of Bolton, came south with a host disguised as friendly Freys, flaying Ironborn and loyal Northerner alike. Winterfell burned, grey stone blackening, and Bran Stark vanished through tunnels with Hodor and the Reeds into snow-swept night. Smoke from those towers joined the dark plumes of war already blotting the sky. Across the Field of Whispers north of Harrenhal, Jaime Lannister shared a fire with Brienne of Tarth, whose sword hand guarded him even in sleep. His chains had slipped by trick of Edmure's mercy. Lord Bolton had claimed hostage only to send him south under Frey banner. Rain hissed upon the coals as Jaime spoke, for the first time, of Mad Aerys's wildfire caches, of the sword that had ended a dragon's reign and burdened him forever with the name Kingslayer. Brienne listened, blue eyes reflective as tarnished steel. The knight's confession forged between them a bond stranger than any vow Jaime had ever sworn, the echo of which would one day steer kingdoms. At sea, Daenerys Targaryen gazed into a brazier of smoking herbs in the cabin of the cog Windblown. The tiny dragon eggs Illyrio had gifted her, amethyst, cream and gold, green-black as forest at dusk, rested upon silk, seemingly lifeless yet heavier each moon. Jorah Mormont stood at her shoulder. Half knight, half exile, his loyalty a complicated tapestry of desire and penance. The Red Priest Mokoro, spared from a wreck and charred by sun, bowed before her and sighted fractals of flame dancing in the brazier's coals. He spoke of a queen of ash and ember, whose steps wake sleeping stone. On deck, cell sails muttered that flames and Dany's wake sometimes rippled green, like wildfire but colder, more ancient. She pressed her palm to the eggs nightly and dreamt of wingbeats. The night they crossed the summer sea's northern reach, comet light cracked the firmament, a long tail burning garnet above roiling cloud. Thunder rolled like the laughter of dead gods. In her narrow bunk Daenerys gasped as heat surged through her bones. Small cracks burst across the shell of the cream-gold egg, light leaking like sunrise. By dawn embers of shell lay scattered, and a hatchling no longer than her forearm curled against her collarbone, smoke curling from its nostrils. Its scales mirrored polished sunset. The crew fell to their knees as one, murmuring Valyrian words they barely knew. Dracarys, blood of the dragon. And Daenerys, who had never known a home, felt the whole world shift beneath her feet as if repositioning itself for the beat of wings. Robb Stark never reached King's Landing. His army camped at the Crossroads Inn when riders came with a message bearing a Twin Towers seal inviting King Robb to Edmure's nuptials at the Twins, a peace offering sweetened by gold and southern hostages. The Blackfish urged caution. Great John roared for trust in swords alone, but Catelyn had tasted the bitterness of burned bridges. Against her heart's protest, she counseled acceptance. War, she said, required impossible pardons. The Riverlord lords rode north with torches flicking like serpents' tongues through rain mist. At the feast in the Twins' great hall, music clashed with plate clatter. Wine ran thick. Robb offered apology to Lord Walder with sincerity that might have softened stone. But not Frey treachery. Knives glinted beneath tables. Crossbows hid behind bedding strewn for the bedding ceremony. When the doors slammed and Rains of Castamir's sword, Catelyn's scream tore hearts asunder. Robb took an arrow above the heart, turned to see his mother's throat bared by Black Walder's blade, and spoke only, "Grey wind." Bolton's spear drove iron through young Wolf's side, the dire wolf howled in the courtyard, and a kingdom's hope bled out upon stones slick with betrayal. News of the Red Wedding flapped across Westeros like a carrion crow, each caw scattering old allegiances to the winds. The north reeled, the riverlands wept, but the lions roared in triumph. When Tywin learned of Robb's death, he allowed himself one thin smile before summoning quills. A king's head for coin paid, balance in the Lannister ledgers. Yet in Dorne, Oberyn Martell heard of the Frey massacre and tasted acid. Treachery begat treachery, and debts of blood seldom stayed settled. Winter thickened. At Castle Black, Jon Snow returned from beyond the wall, with a wildling host at his heels, and a warning carved into his heart. The others marched, raising dead with blue-glinting eyes. Lord Commander Mormont fell beneath mutineers at Craster's Keep. White swarmed fist of the first men. Horns blew in dead forests thrice. Jon found the gate barred by mutinous brothers fearing wildling invasion, but he swore oath enough to open it and let Mance Rayder's ragged army pour through. Bonfires crackled on the courtyard, melting ancient snows, while giants eyed Black brothers with wary distrust. The realm south of the wall concerned itself with crowns. The wall itself trembled. The king in the south who heeded the call was not Joffrey nor Balon, nor the new-made Euron Kraken king of the Isles, but Stannis. Guided by Davos Seaworth and Melisandre's comet-bright faith, he sailed north with every ship remaining loyal. Eastwatch by the sea welcomed broken masts and frost-bitten men, and from there, Stannis marched westward, with discipline more biting than wind. He smashed Mance's camp against the wall's shadow, capturing the king beyond the wall beneath a weirwood, whose bleaching face wept frozen tears. Knights of the realm beheld giants fall beneath steel, saw mammoths crash wide-eyed. Jon Snow's sword rose and fell to protect spearwives and Black brothers alike. And when the weirwood's leaves shuddered, some whispered they saw Lyanna Stark standing ghost-pale among those branches. The Storm King knelt in crusted snow and asked the bastard for counsel. Melisandre's red gaze lingered on Jon. In the flames she saw a boy with a wolf's head, a sword of light, towers frozen and burning. "Here is king's blood," she told Stannis. But the wall answered with cold wind, and for now the dagger stayed sheathed. Aegon's host, now 1,500 strong, and swelled by Stormlander malcontents, captured Haystack Hall in a dawn assault. The young dragon led from front, cloak soaked scarlet where a crossbow bolt grazed his flank. Connington crowned him with a circlet of dark iron studded by the single ruby salvaged from the trident mud. Lords Buckler, Errol, and Penrose bent the knee. Common folk cheered stories of Rhaegar, come again to set right what Robert's hammer had broken. Yet watchers in Storm's End debated cannons and provisions. Stannis held the keep, and no siege would crack that ancient drum tower quickly. In King's Landing, small council tongues wagged. Varys urged caution. Pycelle urged ravens to Old Town for High Septon's anathema. Cersei demanded Jaime's sword, and the faith militant reborn. Tywin arranged a meeting with Mace Tyrell, promising the Reach Lord his precious Margaery wed to King Joffrey, once the mourning year for Sansa's father had conveniently lapsed. Behind each gesture lay a ledger column measured in grain and men. But in the Red Keep's darkest halls, Qyburn, expelled maester, butcher of secrets, worked with powders ground from wildfire crystals, and blood leached from dying traitors. He whispered a new name. Cerberon, the Mountain Reborn, a silent knight whose very sinew reeked of death. Cersei listened, thinking of dragons newly hatched and sons newly threatened. She authorized Qyburn's every obscenity. Daenerys steered the wind-blown west along the old Valyrian Straits, landing in abandoned Valyria's smoke-choked ruins. Her hatchling, she named it Rhaenys for the sister who had died in Maker's Keep, perched upon her shoulder, wings widening each day. Stone streets lay slick with greasy shadow. Stone men moaned beyond broken doorways. Yet, in an echoing hall of fused glass, she found 2 more eggs cracked. The hatchlings crept into daylight as if sunlight were first myth. Drogon, coal-black. Viserion, cream and gold. Yora warned of plague. Mokoro spoke of prophecy fulfilled. Daenerys whispered to the dragons and felt fire kindle in marrow. She claimed a jeweled whip once wielded by slavers of old keys, and melted it to slag before Rhaenys' breath. The free cities would hear. The mother of dragons would break every chain. News of her spark reached Illyrio, reached the Iron Bank, reached Volantis, where red priests preached of her as Azor's sister. But it was Aegon's cause that benefited first. Sel's words flocking to dragons, even if only half-grown. Tywin Lannister died upon a privy seat, a quarrel through belly. The assassin slipped unseen past Lannister guards, leaving only mocking cross-stitch of lion being devoured by wolf, pinned to chamber wall. Cersei raged. Tyrion vanished. Varys too. Blame fell on Stark sympathizers, on Tyrell infiltrators, on Dornish venom. Only Qyburn smiled, shadowed behind a cowl, for with the lion's death the queen's hunger would need monstrous shape to fill. Joffrey's wedding to Margaery Tyrell glittered brighter than wildfire under sun. Sansa, new prisoner cast aside, watched from balcony, tears freezing on cheeks, though the day shone warm. When Joffrey sipped wine laced crimson by Strangler, his face pulped violet, and the Lion-Rose alliance shrieked into shambles. Tyrion stood accused, Margaery widowed before consummation. Cersei's screams echoed off Sept Marble. Amid chaos, Sansa fled with Dantos Hollard to a jolly boat hidden under fog. The night died in arrow through throat. Sansa emerged blinking on a cliff to meet Littlefinger's sly grin. Salt wind tugging her auburn hair toward the horizon where gulls screamed promises of the Erie's alleged refuge. Balon Greyjoy fell from a rope bridge at Pike, blown sideways by Gust Euron, later called Godly Judgment. The crown of salt and rock passed to the Crow's Eye by Kingsmoot, though Asha and Theon's names were thrown. Euron's first decree was one of smoke. Every priest of the drowned god who opposed him was nailed to wharf pilings. His second decree sent Darkwind, Silence, and Stormblack Fleet to seize Shield Islands, to choke Reach grain to King's Landing. Thus Lannister coffers bled just as Iron Bank called in Crown's debts. Oberyn Martell rode through the Red Mountains on a dapple steed toward King's Landing with 8 sand snakes and 100 spears, ostensibly to claim justice for Elia. In truth, he carried a letter bearing Prince Doran's broken seal. Whisper of dragon returns true. Let vengeance wait one more turn. Allay us with fire. Oberyn memorized the words, burned the parchment, and still tasted each syllable as he crossed the Blackwater ferry. He wore a smile fit for poison. With Tywin gone, the small council flailed. Cersei assumed regency for baby Tommen after Myrcella's ship to Sunspear was intercepted by Euron's raiders. Her grief turned to iron rage. She named Qyburn Master of Whispers and Sword. She placed the mountain's newly silent giant called Cerberon at her side, a monstrous sentinel whose visor leaked no breath. Highgarden balked. The Faith muttered. Iron Bank envoys demanded restitution or war. The queen tossed ravens from tower windows and called for more wildfire. Meanwhile, Connington persuaded Aegon to march on the Stormlands proper rather than dash headlong for capital. Griffin's Roost fell in a day. Rainhouse sued for peace. Banners of folded flame, red sword on black, rose along the march. In the marches, Thoros of Myr beheld them and turned grave. If dragon returns, the Lord of Light is not done with Westeros. Beric Dondarrion's one good eye kindled at the thought of prophecy, but his many deaths weighed heavy. He urged caution. The Brotherhood without banners watched Aegon's army from hedges, uncertain whether to kneel or bleed. It was at Summerhall, ruined palace where last dragons died, that Aegon felt the full weight of inheritance. Moonlight filtered through blackened beams, painting ghost shapes on cracked floor. He knelt where Rhaegar had once knelt as boy among ember remains. There, Melisandre arrived in a swirl of red wool, escorting Stannis envoy Davos. Firelight danced in her eyes as she regarded the prince. Here stands dragon forged in shadow of wildfire, she murmured. But shadows lie. Let the flames decide. Now. She cast a torch upon the broken hearth. Orange tongues climbed. Aegon stepped forward. Connington tried to restrain him. The prince plunged his bare hands into the searing core, lifted forth a blackened sword, half melted, one edge dripping red flame. It hissed out, cold as iron. Melisandre's brow creased. Not Lightbringer, she whispered. Perhaps it's Herald. She bowed nonetheless, pronouncing him blood of the dragon, rightful heir by creed. Davos returned to Stannis with word. Another king for the game. Stannis frowned over parchment. If dragon has returned, we take dragon for ally, or we burn him. Jon Snow, seated beside, stared into a brazier of Night's Watch coal. We have another enemy, he said. The dead do not care whose sigil flaps overhead. Stannis' knuckles whitened on table edge. The realm first, then the darkness. Without realm there will still be darkness, Jon answered, and Stannis found no retort. In Pentos, Daenerys dragons lengthened shadows across rooftops. Illyrio greeted her with honeyed words but recoiled when Drogon's roar cracked amphorae. Merchants whispered of slave revolts in Meereen and Astapor, led by unseen queen commanding fire lizards. Dany listened and felt something long dormant in her mother's blood awaken. She studied maps of Slaver's Bay and counted warships offered by sell-sail captains who bowed to flame. Not Westeros yet, she told Jorah. I will hone my rule on the masters who deal in chains. Let my dragons learn smoke over Giscari pyramids first. Jorah bowed, though worry lined his bear's brow. As winter eclipsed the land, snow-blanketed King's Landing's gilded spires. Cersei's pyromancers toiled in cellars, while starving orphans trembled above. Qyburn sent ravens of bone sown with flesh across dark sky. The faith militant rose, seizing stepstones of the sept armed with cudgels, made from melted candlesticks. High Sparrow, ragged yet steadfast, denounced crown corruption from marble pulpit. Cersei ordered his arrest. Half the city knelt to protect him. Tommen, barely 10, watched mother and sept tear at each other with confusion in Boy King's eyes. Under that same snow, Arya Stark slipped into city, disguised as gutter rat. She carried names in her heart: Joffrey, Cersei, Ilyn Payne, Polliver, and a secret stolen from the free city of Braavos, the art of faces. She stalked the alleys, eyes gray, whispering still to needle, though her blade now rested in coin weight behind breast. At Moat Cailin, Roose Bolton unfurled flayed man banners over the ruined towers, naming himself Warden of the North by decree of grateful crown. But the North remembers. The Manderleys at White Harbor salted their stews with southern flesh. The mountain clans melted from snow like ghosts, raiding Dreadfort supply lines. And from Skagos men whispered of a boy with eyes half wolf, half weirwood, riding a giant named Hodor beneath aurora skies. How the very hills shifted to guide his passage. Bran they hushed in mead halls. Stark magic comes again. Battle brewed at Storm's End, where Stannis descended from the north and Aegon advanced from south. Thunderheads reared like war horses over Shipbreaker Bay, spray-coated armor plates in nacre. Stannis' men formed shield wall before the drum tower. Aegon's archers notched. Yet before first arrow loosed, Davos strode between lines bearing parchment signed by Jon Connington and sealed with three-headed dragon. Proposal of alliance to face common foes. Dead men at the wall, Lion Queen in the capital. Melisandre watched Stannis' face. The king's jaw flexed, then relaxed. "They say 2 heads make the dragon," he muttered. "But 3 is its sigil. Let the boy prove his fire." On the battlements, Connington exhaled relief so long held. Within the great hall later that night, torches cast braided shadows as prince and claimant met. Aegon knelt, offering sword still blackened from Summerhall flame. "Stand," Stannis commanded, touching shoulder. "You seek throne by birth. I seek it by justice. Let justice weigh birth." They spoke until candles guttered. Of grain for armies, of ships for wall, of faiths old and red. Finally, Stannis extended gauntlet. "If you aid me at King's Landing, the Iron Throne will judge between us after. Let the gods show their will." Connington bristled, but Aegon clasped the offered hand. "The realm before the crown," he said. Davos later confided in Jon Snow through a fireplace snapping sparks. "Perhaps that alliance saves kingdoms, or births another war fouler still." "Both, likely," Jon answered. He glanced north, imagining blue-lit eyes closing across long leagues. The years slid into deep winter. East of the Free Cities, Daenerys dragons hunted across Slaver's Bay, scorching Astapor's brick walls to glass, tearing the harpy banners from Meereen. Unsullied ranks clicked spears in perfect rhythm, freed slaves crying, "Emissa," in 100 tongues. Yet pyramids cracked under dragon talons. Plague called Pale Mare trotted between alleyways. Yunkish cell sails blockaded harbors. Dany struggled to govern ashes. She dreamed of 3 dragons circling a red mountain, and a 4th shadow, larger, darker, winging from snowfields beyond horizon. She woke certain that her fate lay not east but west, where another fire or ice might test her mettle. On a night when auroras shimmered green and violet over the wall, the others came. White as corpse frost, silent as regret, they advanced across the shattered Weirwood gate, left ajar after wildling parley. White swarmed behind, dead brothers, dead giants, wolves with eyes like milk. Horns blared, fire arrows streaked. Jon Snow, sword longclaw blazing pale in torchlight, shouted orders barely heard over wail of dying wind. Stannis knights fought inside frozen tears clinging to beards. Melisandre raised arms, chanting Valyrian hymn. Her ruby burned star-bright. The first other shattered under dragonglass spear. The second died to flame-kissed arrow, yet they kept coming. Suddenly, a roar split heaven. A mass of black wings descended, Drogon, grown monstrous, Rhaenys and Viserion close behind. Dragonfire met ice-forged spears in explosion of steam. Jon felt heat sear cheeks as Drogon swept low, incinerating a knot of whites by Eastwatch's outer palisade. Upon the dragon's neck, Daenerys gleamed silver, hair whipping. Melisandre's eyes widened. Prophecy converged in conflagration. Dany landed within the courtyard, meeting Jon amid smoke. No words existed for what passed between them. Shock of familiarity, meeting of 2 halves of story long sundered. She spoke first. "I followed a star of smoke and salt to monsters I could scarcely believe." Jon nodded toward dead now melting. "They believe in nothing but cold." He offered his sword's pommel. "We must stand together." Above them Drogon roared again, and in that roar echoed the hammer stroke that had once felled Prince Rhaegar. Echo of the scream when Ned Stark knelt for Joffrey. Echo of Lyanna's laughter lost to fever. Fire and ice mingled, the long-promised song beginning. In King's Landing, bells rang alarm. Stannis and Aegon's joint fleet rode the Blackwater tide under dragon banners, newly stitched with fiery heart. Wildfire stores had been moved or squandered. Gold cloaks muttered that Queen's monster knight tore arms from men who faltered. Tyrell roses bristled at walls, ready to defend new queen consort Margaery. Within Maegor's holdfast, young Tommen clutched a stuffed lion to chest, while Cersei armed him with crown heavy as despair. The siege was short and cataclysmic. Stannis' seasoned infantry scaled weakened walls at Mudgate while Aegon's Stormlanders crashed Gate of the Gods. The mountain thing hewed through dozens before Dragonflame bathed him. Green wildfire pockets ignited in confusion, transforming Bay into emerald inferno. Amid smoke, Jaime Lannister cut Cerberon's legs, while Tyrion smashed Helm with Warhammer, smaller than Robert's but just as decisive. The creature fell, oozing black fluid, silent, even in death. In throne room strewn with ash, Cersei held Joffrey's crown before Aegon's approach, mad laughter turning to sob. She drew a dagger to Tommen's throat. Jaime pleaded, armor clanking, yet Prince Aegon beckoned Drogon perched at window. The dragon's hiss became thunder. Cersei's courage broke. She dropped steel. Flames licked ruby rug edges, but Tommen lived. Guards carried her away ranting of prophecy and younger queens. Stannis strode to Iron Throne, sword unsheathed. Aegon blocked path. Around them, others still marched in north. Daenerys approached astride Drogon through shattered roof, snowflakes swirling with soot. 3 heads of dragon, one of iron, one of blood, one of flame, faced the barbed seat built for but one. Each saw in the other both rival and ally. Tyrion limped forward into quiet, voice rough. My lords, my ladies, white shadows gather beyond wall. Krakens choke seas, corpses pile in streets. Sit or daunt, but decide swiftly which of you leads us against death, else crowns burn empty upon frozen skulls. Silence swallowed Hall. Snow drifted through broken oculus, melting on hot blade edges. Slowly, Aegon sank to one knee. For realm's sake, I bend, he said. But I will stand again when death is beaten. He offered sword, hilt out. Stannis looked to Melisandre. Her red eyes glowed approval. He accepted the sword, mindful of its half-melted edge, and placed it at Daenerys' feet. Dragon's fire belongs to dragon. He knelt next to Prince. Knights gasped. Daenerys stepped forward, Drogon's heat shimmering about her. She touched both on shoulder and spoke. Then by fire and blood, and the Seven's silent witness, let us forge a kingdom of the living. Outside, dawn-painted towers rose gold. For the first time in living memory, every bell in King's Landing pealed not for war or death, but for unity unknown. The sound rolled north across fields ravaged, bounced off still waters of Trident, echoed through moors where Bolton skulked, across ruins where ghosts of direwolves prowled. Atop the wall, yet smoking, Jon Snow heard the faint clang of hope, and wondered if it could be enough before night came for all. In distant Skagos caves, Bran's stark-opened eyes glazed white, blinking from Greenseer trance. Beside him, Hodor cradled broken weirwood leaf that pulsed faint light. Bran smiled a boy's smile aged by trees' wisdom. They come together as the roots showed, he whispered. But the song is not over. He reached into fire and felt no pain. Sparks leapt skyward, carrying in their brief glow the faces of those still to fight, still to fall. Arya wearing eyes of another. Theon kneeling before unknowable tide. Sansa upon a frost-rimmed battlement crowned in snow. And far beyond even weirwood root sight, in deeps of night where stars burned blue, the great other stirred, feeling dragon flame warm the world, and plotting chill to quench it. Between hammer and anvil, crown and crown, wolf and stag, kraken and lion, all mankind's clamor meant naught. Only the song mattered now, and it swelled toward crescendo. Yet as long as one heartbeat thrummed with courage, be it in a crippled boy's chest, a bastard's, a queen's, or a prince's, as long as dragons answered to fire and direwolves to moon, dawn might follow. And perhaps, in some spring yet unpromised, the ghosts of Robert and Lyanna would meet where rose meets storm and smile, to see the children of their broken age build a world worth the pain it cost. For now, though, winter's breath still fogged every pane of glass in the shattered Red Keep, and the next chapter of war waited like a blade unsheathed beside a restless sleeper. Sharp, cold, inevitable. Night settled over King's Landing like a velvet mantle stitched with embers from still smoldering roofs. In the Red Keep's highest solar denaries sat barefoot upon a bench of carven weirwood, the cool wood grain a shock after years of sand and deck plank. Outside, 3 dragons coiled around broken merlons, wings mantling as roosting bats might. Their breath haloed the moon with shifting gold and green and smoke. Inside, torchlight guttered, while a council of uneasy allies formed a ragged circle. Stannis Baratheon stood at the window, silhouetted against restless night. Jon Connington glowered beside him, mail clinking each time his scarred fingers flexed. Aegon paced near the hearth, shoulders squared yet too thin for the iron weight he longed to carry. Davos lingered apart, silent, save for the soft scrape of worn fingers against the pouch of fingerbones at his neck. Tyrion occupied an armchair stuffed with moth-eaten brocade, one boot hooked on the arm, goblet balanced on scarred palm. He sipped and watched, with an alchemist's curiosity, as men of fire and ice tried to discover the melting point of pride. The queen broke their hush. The city will not sleep while lions prowl its rubble. Cersei may be caged, but her claws remain long. Tomorrow we feed the hungry, tear down the worst of the pyromancer's vaults, and string 1,000 lanterns across Flea Bottom so darkness hides no conspirators. She spoke softly, but Drogon rumbled agreement through cracked stones. Stannis did not turn from the window. Light will not warm empty bellies. Grain stores run low. Then the Reach must open its granaries, Aegon said. House Tyrell swore peace. Tyrion gave a tiny snort. They swore to whichever wolf or lion worried their gardens least. With Lord Tywin, scarce in his grave, and Cersei soon to stand trial, Olenna already sharpens her shears for new hedges. Betty. Davos stepped forward. Leave talk of roses to another hour. The dead wait for no harvest. The wall sends ravens daily. Whites mass in tens of thousands beyond Queen's Crown, and I've read words that chilled me worse than any snow. There are ice spiders big as hounds stalking through the night. That drew Stannis from the window. I rode north once already, and none followed but broken men. Now I have foot enough to stand against the storm, yet every grain of strength we spend garrisoning this hive of intrigue is strength not spent where it must be. Thou. Jon Snow leaned in the doorway then, a shadow still wrapped in rime, though Southron hearths baked the air. He had arrived with the last of Stannis' outriders while the city's bells still pealed. Dust of countless leagues cloaked his black cloak, and Longclaw hung at his hip, its stone wolf agleam. My lord is right, he said, voice raw from raven-barking winds. I left men burning their own dead, because they had no time to dig. Eastwatch's outer palisade is gone. We can spare no more than a moon to settle thrones. Now and so. Daenerys studied the snow-stung man from beneath the pale fall of her hair. He smelled of pine smoke, and old leather and some wild frost-clean scent that stirred in her a memory of places she had never seen. Grey keeps, wolf songs beneath shimmering stars. We will not linger so long, she promised. But neither will we march half-starved and quarreling. Tomorrow we gather the surviving masters of coin, open Tyrell vaults, and send riders to every holdfast still sworn to the realm. And 3 days, hence a council of faith and lordship will proclaim a united regency, for all of us. After that, the host rides north. Stannis' mouth pinched. A council. Crowded rule has birthed enough folly. Aegon halted his pacing. Not rule. Promise. The people must see more than blades and dragons. They must know whoever sits the throne stands for life against death. Jon met the prince's violet gaze. If you cannot share council halls, you will never share battlefields. Slowly, Stannis nodded once. Tyrion's smirk could have cut parchment. See? He murmured to no one. Already we brink upon miracles. A torch hissed as resin popped. Outside, the boom of surf against Blackwater cliffs sounded like the footfalls of some unseen giant. In the dungeons miles below, Cersei rocked on a pallet, whispering the prophecy of Maggie the Frog, until the words lost meaning, then began again. Gold shall be their crowns and gold their shrouds. Only 3 times had the witch ever mentioned a sister, younger, more beautiful, yet that line gnawed deeper than all. Now a silver-haired girl with fire in her eyes walked the palace halls, and Cersei felt the hook of doom sink beneath her breastbone. She tore at her shift until nails bled, but doom remained. Footsteps clanged beyond the bars. Qyburn approached with basket and candle. Even his smile looked bruised since the fall of his monster knight, yet in his gaze lingered zealot's fire. "My queen," he murmured through iron lattice, "the seed of defeat may bloom into darker flower. We need but soil and patience." Cersei's eyes shone lambent in candlelight. "My children. Tommen eats and sleeps. Myrcella is safe in the prince's apartments." Sir Robert Strong fell. "But there are other arts. The dragon woman's beasts roost above. Scales may yet shed secrets. Give me leave." "Take what you need," she hissed, "and bring me wine." He bowed like a supplicant at unholy altar. When he left, Cersei pressed bleeding palm to stone and tasted copper. "Younger," she whispered. "More beautiful. But ashes can be beautiful too." That same hour, Arya Stark padded along rooftops of the Street of Steel in a borrowed smith's jerkin that smelled of hot iron and horse piss. Her face tonight was lantern-jawed, freckles spattered across a wide nose. She leapt a narrow alley and landed without sound, remembering the dancing master's grace. In the waistband of her breeches lay needle, and in her heart 6 names remained: Cersei, Ilyn, Meryn Trant, Walder Frey, Roose Bolton, Littlefinger. 6 lights to snuff out before she would let herself be Arya again. A glimmer of dragonfire flickered atop the palace spires. Dawn's first blush, or perhaps a restless hatchling. She watched, amazed that any beast might choose to perch within such walls, then turned south toward the flea-bottom tenements where gold cloaks still extorted copper from starving mothers. Steel whispering free of scabbard, she descended into the maze. "Valar Morghulis," she breathed, and the night answered, a silent echo in hidden tongues. A week later, the Grand Sept burned with candles enough to shame the sun. Noblemen crowded pews, their breath fogging in the chill that seeped through cracked marble. Tyrell guards in rose-welted cloaks flanked the aisles. Stormlander pennants drooped next to banners of Stark direwolf, Baratheon crowned stag, Targaryen 3-head. At the altar, the High Septon, no longer the ragged sparrow but a compromise, robed in undyed wool beneath the crystal crown, offered prayers for unity, mercy, and courage. When Daenerys stepped into the light, her silver hair spilled around shoulders clad in simple white, a single dragon-tooth pendant at her throat. Behind her paced Drogon, small as a hill, and thrice as menacing, restrained only by a thick chain of black iron, gripped by Grey Worm, and 2 unsullied. The beast's golden eyes unsettled more than one lord, yet they all bowed as her shadow fell across cracked tiles. Next came Stannis in black and red. His jaw seemed hewn of storms and granite. Aegon followed, violet gaze sweeping the galleries where common folk craned necks. Jon Snow, though he disavowed crowns, stood sentinel at Daenerys' right, Night's Watch blacks newly mended. Sansa Stark watched from balcony, her hair unbound, heart aching at the sight of her half-brother so transformed. The ceremony lasted an age, oaths sworn on 7-pointed star, and to the old gods beneath a weirwood bough transported from God's eye. Each swore to suspend all titles save those essential for command. For 5 years a council of 3 would govern, with Jon Snow as Lord Commander of the Northern March and Warden of the Wall. Grain tariffs repealed, levies to rebuild fleets. Trial by faith for Cersei promised within a moon of winter's end. At last the High Septon raised hands. Go forth as one sword of living men. When they emerged into the square, thousands roared until throats bled. Yet as cheers echoed off holdfast walls, a white feathered raven fluttered down, landing upon Jon's shoulder. Its scroll bore the wax of Castle Black. Jon broke the seal. His face went gray. Hardhome has fallen, he said. 10,000 free folk dead, risen again before their kin's eyes. The Night King leads them south. Now. Silence swallowed the plaza. Daenerys lifted chin. Then we ride this night. The winter road north bit deep. Even the dragons shivered when sleet struck their wings. Rhaenys and Viserion circled beside royal wagon, warming columns with gusts of hot breath that turned frost to mist. Behind marched 20,000 men, unsullied ranks in perfect squares, Stormlander levies, Reach crossbowmen under red wine banners, Stark spearwives cloaked in direwolf pelts, even ironborn volunteers who spat curses at Euron's name and preferred death in snow to life under Crow's eye. Ghost padded at Jon's side, albino-coated ghost within swirling flurries. Whole villages emptied before the army arrived, northerners carrying babes on sledges, riverfolk bundled in straw. Disease stalked them. Flux, frostbite, a wasting cough the maesters called blue lung. Melisandre rode in a covered litter chanting prayers to Lord of Light, but for every fever she soothed 3 more arose. Yet the host pressed on, driven by nightmares glimpsed in wall ravens. Columns of dead stretching horizon to horizon. Giants with hearts frozen to diamonds. A white stag impaled on a tree of ice. At Moat Cailin, Bolton banners still flew. The flayed man leered crimson against snow. Roose Bolton met the allied host outside shattered gates, pale eyes unreadable. His army stood ready. 5,000 spears. 200 mounted Dreadfort men. Frey archers perched upon ramparts. Sansa rode forward between Jon and Brienne, cloak streaming blue silk. Bolton's lips curved. Lady Stark, you bring half a world home to claim a keep that once was yours. I bring justice, she said. Roose raised a hand. Atop the walls, a hooded figure appeared. Arya, features masked by burlap sack, a blade at her throat. Behind her Walda Frey wept silently, clutching babes swaddled in pink. Prisoners enough to cool your ardor, Bolton noted. Turn south and I will release them unharmed. Wind keen as razors cut through the marsh. Sansa's face remained stone, but inside her heart hammered like smiths worked iron. Jon's gloved hand tightened on reins. Suddenly, Arya jerked free. The burlap hood fell, revealing the wrong face, a bearded soldier. The real Arya erupted from behind Roose's standard-bearer, small hand driving a dirk between Bolton's ribs. Gray wind roared. The bearded hostage melted into wrinkled skin of the waif who collapsed spitting blood. Chaos swallowed ramparts as Frey men loosed arrows, unsullied shields locked overhead. Within breaths, Roose lay gasping crimson. Sansa dismounted, knelt beside him. The North remembers. She closed his eyes. With Bolton command severed, half the garrison surrendered at once. Those who did not saw Rhaenys stoop upon gatehouse, tail-smashing merlins like tin. Arya wiped blade, eyes meeting Sansa's. For a heartbeat, they were mere sisters again. Before the moats, the wolves, the deaths. They embraced, and even the dragon's roars softened. Jon pulled arrow from sleeve, releasing breath he hadn't known he held. Winterfell lies open now. Beyond Winterfell by 10 leagues, the dead advanced. No banner, no herald. Moonlight glimmered upon an ocean of helms rimed with frost. Where rivers flowed, they iced over under the host's passing. Where trees stood, they bent, limbs glass-coated, until branches snapped like brittle bones. At the van rode white walkers astride pallid steeds. Atop a great stallion of hoarfrost sat the Night King, visage expressionless, save for eyes bluer than noon skies never seen in winter. Bran Stark felt his presence from miles away, a pressure like deep sea weight upon the mind. In the hidden crypts of the Black Pool near Winterfell Godswood, Bran's green dream shattered into a kaleidoscope of possible tomorrows. Swords alight with dawnfire, dragons tumbling in blizzard, a weirwood crown of living branches upon a wolf-headed king. When he surfaced into candlelit cave, he turned to Mira. We must go to the Heart Tree, he said. Tonight. The armies of the living gathered in Winterfell's shadow 2 days later. Fresh snow layered the fields, but men stamped stable straw into crimson-dyed mud. forging ramparts of packed ice and ditch lines lined with dragon-glass stakes, bowies sharpened. Maesters brewed wildfire pot burning blue, ironborn coated arrows in lamp oil. Stark smiths hammered skeletons of trebuchets sized for dragon-bone fulcrums. When Dothraki outriders arrived, some had sailed after hearing Khal Quoro speak of Stormborn Queen. They galloped the perimeter, shrieking war cries that made ravens scatter. In war, tent Daenerys traced battle map with slim finger. Dragons strike the lieutenants, unsullied hold the breach lines, northern cavalry harry flanks. Stannis commands western rise, Aegon eastern slope. Jon set an obsidian dagger upon a carved figure of the Night King. He will come straight for me. He knows who I am. Davos frowned. But let him come. We have fire. Tyrion leaned overboard. Fire enough melts snow, but will it melt whatever lies inside that devil? Bran's voice came from shadowed arch. Not fire. Memory. They turned. Bran seemed older than boyhood now, wrapped in gray cloak lined with weirwood leaves. Eyes glimmered green and white. He was made beneath a heart tree with dragonglass in breast. Fire sears flesh, but his spine is story woven through time. Break the tale, and you break the king. Daenerys studied Bran. How? With the blade that began his story. Bran produced a shard of black stone thin as stiletto, edges shimmering. The children of forest gave it to me. Drive it where the first piece entered, and the knot unravels. Silence thickened. Jon reached for the dagger. Bran caught his wrist. Not you. If you fail, he takes what he came for. Life in its last song. Now. Arya stepped forward. I am faster. She weighed dagger, grinned wolfishly. Jon wanted to argue, but the look in her eyes he once saw peer over stable fence, daring the world, told him she had already chosen. Daenerys turned back to map. Very well. Dragons clear the way for Arya. At dawn we fight. Night before battle, few slept. Sansa stood on rampart, cloak snapped by wind. Tyrion joined her. I brought wine, he said, lifting skin. They drank in silence. Below, unsullied lit rows of trench pyres. The flames reflected in Tyrion's mismatched eyes. If I die, he said, bury me with book of jokes. Or better, toss me in a cask of arbor gold. I'll be content at last. Sansa rested gloved hand on his. You will not die. He chuckled. I've heard that before. Then softer. You have grown into a queen no song predicted. She managed a small smile. And you a good man despite every reason not to be. Wind carried ghostly moans from forests. They fell silent again, each comforted and terrified by the other's presence. Dawn came wan and gray. The dead arrived as white mist, then shimmered into ranks. Drums beat, Mance raiders' wildlings hammered shields, Dornish warhorns keened. Dragons rose roaring, eclipsing pale sun. The first charge belonged to Dothraki. Araks ablaze with fire oil streaked like comets. They crashed into skeletal ranks, blazing arcs carving swathes until cold snuffed flame, and riders' cries turned to shrieks. Lights winked out across plain. Back at walls, Grey Worm's lips moved in silent prayer. Unsullied advanced next, shields interlocking. Volleys of black feathered arrows arced overhead, each tip obsidian. Every walker pierced, burst in spray of frost. But for each fallen, a dozen whites pressed. On Wintertown Ridge, Stannis trebuchets hurled barrels of oil lit mid-arc by flaming boulders thrown from eastern slope catapults. Explosions rippled, sending limbs skyward in shards of ice and bone. Aegon led Stormlander knights through gap, his blade singing high Valyrian as Ghost of Rhaegar guided hand. Far above, Drogon and Viserion spiraled, exhaling torrents that vaporized hundreds, yet the river of dead flowed inexhaustible. In courtyard near Godswood Gate, Arya waited, breath pluming. Bran sat beneath heart tree, eyes rolled white, raven spiraling overhead. Night King rode through war like pale god, blade of ice in hand. When dragons swooped, he raised arm. Spears of crystal shot skyward. Viserion screamed as shard-pierced wing spiraled down. Drogon banked, flame swirling but missing mark. Jon engaged a White Walker commander. Longclaw met Iceblade, sparks singing. Near him Ghost lunged, jaws locking on undead direwolf once gray, now corpse stiff. Hodor swung log club wider than man's waist, crushing whites into snow paste. Then the Night King dismounted, stepping toward Hearttree with inhuman calm. Winds died as if the world inhaled. Whites parted, forming corridor. Bran's eyes opened, but pupils black, gorging deep. Arya breathed once and ran. She leapt beetling wall of corpses, boots silent. Dead hands clawed, but she slid like shadow. The Night King paused, cocking head. He felt her perhaps, yet too late. She landed behind, dagger reversed. He spun, Iceblade slicing. Needle flashed, parried once. Then she dropped the pommel, reversed catch mid-fall, and drove dragging glass stiletto into chink below his breastplate. Blue eyes widened. A sound like shattering winter crocus filled morning as cracks spidered across his flesh. He exploded into snow dust. Whites jerked, spasmed, collapsed. Silence rolled outward. Atop ridge living men stared, stunned. Then a roar built. Wildlings unsullied, Northmen, Stormlanders, Dornish, all voices entwined. Dragons trumpeted victory. After 2 days of pyres, snow began to melt. The weirwood in Godswood bled bright sap as if grateful. Survivors walked among ashes and knew the world reborn. In the great hall of Winterfell, Daenerys addressed the gathered realm. We have stood together against death. Now we must stand together in life. I will not claim a crown unshared. Let the kingdoms choose their voices. Jon Snow stepped forward. I was never meant for thrones. My duty lies upon walls' ruins to guard whatever darkness may yet stir. But the North will no longer kneel to lions or dragons. We will stand free. Friends, equals. Ben, Idor. Stannis raised one brow but inclined head. Aegon nodded solemnly. Daenerys smiled, sadly yet proud. Then let it be so. Seven once, now four. The North, the Isles and rivers, the Reach and Storm and the crownlands of dragons, all bound in league of winter's memory. Cheer rose. Not all joined. There were dissenters, Tyrell envoys bristling, Euron's ghost haunting seas, but hope seeped like thaw into places long frozen. Spring's first crocus pushed through ash on Trident Bank where once rubies lay. In that dawning, Tyrion drafted a charter of realms. Sansa rebuilt Winterfell's collapsed towers while singing to child orphans. Arya sailed west on ship, named Wolf's Blood seeking lands. No map drew. Bran tended Hearttree whose branches now glimmered new green. Davos oversaw grain fleets to battered villages. Melisandre walked into Frostfangs and was never seen again. On a soft morning, Daenerys walked ramparts of Dragonstone rebuilt. Jon joined her during rare visit south. They watched Drogon and Rhaenys wheel above. Will dragons stay now that war is done? Jon asked. They are wind and flame, she said. They stay where hearts burn true. She looked at him, and for a heartbeat their shared scars shone like matching runes. Then she turned to see. There will always be another winter, she said. But now the world knows how to face it, together. Below, waves whispered against black shore. Ancient hymn older than crowns. Far inland new orchards blossomed where battle once raged, and in those blossoms children chased each other, chanting a song that had already become legend. Of a wolf and dragon and hammer's blow, of a girl who danced with death beneath a red leaf tree, of a realm that remembered and therefore endured. And somewhere, perhaps, ghosts of Robert and Lyanna walked through evening garden lit by fireflies, hand in hand at last, smiling at the kingdom that grew from the seed of their broken dream. Gray dawn pooled over Dragonstone like watered ink, lapping against basalt ramparts that still bore the scorch marks of Rhaenys landing. On the castle's lee side the sea chopped restlessly, rattling flotsam against the black steps. But within the high hall the air weighed heavier than stone. Daenerys stood before the long table of carved Westeros that her ancestors had once bent kings upon, fingers tracing the narrow sea's painted waves. 6 months had passed since the snows of Winterfell melted under dragonflame and dawn, yet the realm breathed only the shallow half-breath of convalescence. Behind her, Tyrion cleared his throat. If we postpone another convening, the princes of the free cities will smell weakness. Braavos already presses its unpaid balances, and Volantis dangles an alliance with Euron's fleet. He shuffled papers, bearing crabbed Braavosi sigils. Your regency's treasury is leaner than a flea in winter. Daenerys did not look up. Summon the council for sundown. We will carve new coin from basalt, if we must. Her gaze lingered on the map's eastern edge, where the summer sea bled off into the unknown. Arya had sailed there, chasing the sunset. The queen wondered which horizon a wolf ran to when the world grew too small for her. Then her thoughts snapped back to ironborn sails and Braavosi bankers. The hand of the queen cracked a wry grin. Allow me to draft an apology steeped in humility for the Iron Bank. Perhaps mention the time we saved the world. Surely worth deferred interest. Draft what you like, she answered. But coin is only a plaster. We need grain. We need ships faster than Euron can build them. I cannot feed 2 million small folk on promises. Dan? Tyrion's grin faded. You cannot rule a realm that starves, true. But if Euron breaks the gullet, the arbor harvest rots in its casks. We must open trade lanes, and that, he tapped the parchment, means either buying the Red Wine Fleet's loyalty or building one of our own. Daenerys pushed hair from her face, at once queen and wanderer girl again. Then gather every shipwright in Driftmark. Promise them remission of taxes and a purse of gold for each keel. Tell them the dragon's coffers will pay in full after the first convoy reaches King's Landing with bread for every child. Bendy. Tyrion bowed. I shall sell them hope then. Hope was fickle, she thought, and rarely fed on words alone. Dragons required meat. People required faith. And neither lingered when winter memories still haunted. Few leagues south, Storm's End loomed like a clenched fist against thundercloud sky. Prince Aegon paced its lower gallery, palms folded behind his back, listening to gull cry echo in vaulting arches. Everything smelled of wet stone and salt, the perfume of his reborn dynasty, Connington joked. Yet the prince's mood darkened with each raven from the capital. Connington entered, helm and crook of arm, red griffin on green surcoat spattered with travel mud. Your Grace, the queen has called council at sundown on Dragonstone. They wish your presence. Aegon nodded stiffly. I will ride north before sails can billow south. But Stannis anchors every Stormlander levy here. He refuses to let a single spear depart. The prince's jaw tightened. Thane's pirates still raid the marches. Yet I see no shattered masts, only walls thicker than Dornish pride. No. Connington's gaze softened. A queen asks, a king must answer. Storm's End stands even should Stannis chain its garrison to the parapets. Go, my prince. Earn the trust you covet. Aegon exhaled. You speak like father and brother at once, John Connington. I will saddle before noontide. He paused, eyes fixed on the eastern horizon. Send word to Tarth as well. If Selmy's squires finished refitting those swan-hulled carracks, we may yet race the pirates for the gullet. And so. In King's Landing the streets festered beneath high summer heat. The Crownland's early harvest came shriveled, fields sodden by late snowmelt, then baked to dust. Bread lines wound under scorched Bailey shadows. Above them, Cersei's trial banners hung limp from balustrades, red-bottomed in gold, the lion rampant. Even in her absence, the sigil blazed bright, as though memory refused to gutter. Inside the sept that once crowned the Hill of Rhaenys, rebuilt in wood and makeshift scaffolds, the Queen Dowager knelt before 7 slender statues, wrists clasped in manacles. She wore plain gray linen, though dusklight caught a spark in her lion-green eyes. The faith militant formed half-circle behind, mailed heels clicking as High Septon Mathers finished prayer. Tommen, barely 11, and already graven into solemnity by loss, sat high on dais with Sansa Stark at one side, Brienne behind. When the last Aemon faded, Cersei lifted her face to her youngest. My sweet boy, she said, voice low yet clear enough to carry. I confess many failings, but never failing love for you." High Septon raised a hand. "Queen Cersei, the trial is sworn to judge your crimes, not affections." Cersei's gaze did not budge from Tommen. "If love be a crime, the gods may strike me now." A twitch rippled Mather's lip. He read charges: conspiracy, regicide, incest, treason. Each word fluttered like dying moth in heavy air. Expected testimony followed. Pycelle's records of vanished poisons, Qyburn's experiments, a stable boy recalling golden twins enmeshed in straw. Jaime would not appear, still crippled arm healing in a tower guarded half for his protection, half for suspicion. When the prosecution rested, murmurs stirred the benches. Mathers signaled Cersei to speak in her defense. She rose unbowed. "You list sins as parchments list dead after battle. Yet who here bled upon Blackwater walls while dragons and wildfire turned night to hell? Who shielded this city's children when Robert's bastards dangled from gate spikes? I did." Iron rattled on her wrists. "I do not ask mercy. I ask remembrance. A realm that forgets what mothers spill for it deserves the ashes that follow." "Then?" Sansa's hands tightened in her lap. "B." She saw Joffrey's grin in memory, felt Phantom cut at her lip where he'd struck her. Yet across the hall, Tommen's eyes brimmed with tears. Just a child, still a brother. The verdict required 3 votes of the 7 most devout. 6 rose to convict. The 7th, the Septa known once as Mela, who'd nursed Joff at breast, hesitated, then shook head. Gasps rippled. Equal votes meant final judgment passed to King Regent. All eyes turned to Tommen. He stood, small shoulders squared beneath cloak, half dwarfing him. For 3 heartbeats, winter wolves and roaring lions danced across his features. Then he spoke, voice clear, though tremoring. "The Queen Dowager shall take the black." Cersei swayed. Sansa's breath caught. In gallery, very steepled fingers. Qyburn, lurking behind a pillar, slipped away like a dark dream. Mathers intoned blessing. "May she serve until death, guarding realms she once endangered." Tommen descended dais. Cersei dropped to knees again, arms wide. The boy hugged her fiercely. "I love you," he whispered. "Always." Her voice cracked. "And I you, my sweet." Chains clinked as she smoothed hair from his brow. Then the Kingsguard escorted her out through side door into carriage bound for White Harbor and ships to Eastwatch. Thus did a lioness leave her cub, silent tears carving tracks through grime upon her cheeks. Long leagues north, the wall's shattered span echoed with hammer song. Jon Snow strode beneath scaffolding where Night's Watch and wildlings labored side by side, raising new timber braces between surviving stone towers. Ghosts prowled the walkways. Children of free folk scattered from his pink stare but crept near again after each pass. At the courtyard forge, gentry Baratheon quenched red-hot ingot in brine. Steam rose around brawny arms. Jon halted. "How many spearheads left?" "1 cart yet," Gendry said, wiping sweat. "We'll have 2,000 daggers by week's turn." Jon clasped forearm. "The realm may forget, but you keep forging anyway." "Can't forget steel." Gendry grinned. "Besides, gold cloaks would string me if I stayed in King's Landing. Too many debts unpaid." They shared tired laughter. Overhead, a raven circled, then dropped to perch on broken crenel. Its scroll bore stark direwolf seal. Jon untied the thread, unfolded parchment. Sansa's neat hand relayed Cersei's sentence. Beneath, Arya's hurried scrawl patched on. "Tell the old crow he's getting company soon." Jon tucked note into jerkin. "The wall grows strange," he murmured. "Kings, queens, lions, now come to freeze with us." "Plenty of room," Gendry said wryly. But his glance southwards showed worry. Night fell iced blue. Jon climbed the rebuilt stairs to topmost platform where Melisandre kept solitary vigil. Her red skirts flared in wind. "You read the flames again," he greeted. She nodded, ruby at her throat pulsing. "They whisper much. Embers of war yet glow beneath these snows." Another war. Weariness dragged at him. Not of dead. A man of storms and wings will cross the sea, trailing shadow deeper than Night King's. She met his gaze. Beware the Kraken's horn. Jon frowned. You're on again. She closed eyes. Names shift like smoke. The truth remains. As long as pride burns, so will conflict. Nenadisman. Far across narrow sea, Iron Victory rode heavy swell under black sails, stitched with red-eyed krakens. In her forecastle, Euron Greyjoy supped upon roasted dolphin flanks, laughing at thunder that boomed ahead. The sorcerer Mokoro knelt opposite, wrists clamped by chains of red gold. Euron tilted wine into the priest's beard. Tell me again, red man, what the flames showed. Mokoro's eyes rolled white. I saw a crown of smoke devouring a city of bells. Scales of night took flight. 3 heads burnt into 2. The 3rd drowned. A horn sounded once, and walls of black stone fell. Bendawal. Euron licked wine from thumb. Black stone, like old ones left on battle isle. Good. My silence will see them tumble. He leaned close, breath acrid with wine and meat. 1 toot from Dragonbinder, and that scaled witch's pets will roost on my mast. Mokoro's ruined lips curled. Blow that horn and fire will scald your lungs. Euron shrugged. We all choke on something in the end. He rose, swallowing laughter as he strode to quarterdeck where the dragonbone horn rested in nested chests, runes pulsing under lantern light. Storm clouds massed around his hull. Loose canvas, he barked. Set course for Gullet. Tonight we pluck dragon eggs from henhouse. On Dragonstone's beach, Aegon's column of riders arrived beneath dusk. Daenerys greeted him barefoot in sand still warm from day sun. They clasped wrists, not crowns. You came swiftly, she said. Storms chase more fiercely than ravens, he answered, nodding to eastern horizon, where bruised cloud flickered with violet lightning. I fear they carry krakens. He relayed Connington's spy reports. Sails sighted near Isca, rumors of a horn that killed men who heard it. Dany's mouth tightened. Another shadow for the realm. She gazed toward stabled dragons roosted upon cliffs. Then we fly at dawn to meet it. Better to strike by night, Aegon advised. Surprise works even against sorcery. She studied him. In his eyes lived Rhaegar, a kindness edging iron. You will ride with me? He swallowed visible awe. If Drogon allows. Drogon allows no one, she said. But Rhaenys might. She whistled toward Cliff. The bronze-green she-dragon answered with a rumbling croon, hopping to stretch membranes wide. Aegon stepped forward, hand on hilt, though more from wonder than fear. He bowed. The dragon sniffed and astonishingly lowered her head. That night, 2 dragons lifted from Dragonstone in silhouette against lightning-split sky, one larger than half the fishing boats lining the cove. Sea wind whipped riders' cloaks. They banked southeast, following moonglint on waters churned by distant hulls. Near midnight, Rhaenys' keen eyes sighted torch flecks upon blackness. A vast cluster of ships, sails adorned with red krakens, barely seen. Dany signaled with torch of her own. Numbers counted. 30, maybe more. The silence, pale wood bone pale, rode center, a horn like a black rib protruding from forecastle platform. They dived. Dragonflame fanned across masts, rigging charred to ash, sails shriveled. Ironmen shrieked. But as Drogon wheeled, a sound ripped the night. Low brazen, like a wounded god's bellow. Dragonbinder moaned. Flame guttered along Drogon's throat. He veered, wings shuddering. Rhaenys screamed, twisting mid-air. Aegon clung to harness, eyes watering as a second blast tore the dark. Euron strode onto deck, cloak whipping. He blew once more. Blood wept from his ears, yet his grin split wider. The horn's note clawed minds. Rhaenys faltered, dropping altitude. Drogon roared defiance, but his fire sputtered amber sparks. Daenerys felt scales beneath her legs vibrate like lute strings near snapping. Do not heed the horn, she whispered into wind, stroking neck ridge. She turned Drogon, dove toward the silence. Crossbow bolts streaked upward, glancing off scale, but one embedded in flesh near wing root. Drogon shrieked, pain lending fury. He exhaled ragged jet. The forecastle exploded, horn-bearers incinerated. Yet Euron stood untouched, lashes burnt but eyes wild. He tossed the horn, charred, into sea, and leapt to quarterdeck manning Scorpion. Loose! The bolt streaked. Dany banked, bolt clipping edge of saddle, tearing strap. She clung as Drogon lurched. Above, Rhaenys regained breath, and plunged, Aegon guiding with reins. Dragonflame washed across Silence's midships, cooking deck planks. Wood popped, tar oozed. Aegon wheeled for another pass, when a catapult stone from secondary longships slammed into Rhaenys' spine. The dragon screeched, wings folding. Aegon cried out as they spiraled toward sea. Water swallowed them, icy hammer blow. He surfaced gasping, saw Rhaenys flailing, tail sweeping Ironman into brine. Another bolt pierced her gill. Blood like molten bronze clouded water. With final roar she wrapped coils around the longship's keel and dragged both beneath. Aegon bobbed among wreckage. Thunder rumbled. Lightning revealed Drogon hovering, Dany leaning low to scan waves. She saw him dipped. Ironman arrows arced up, one finding exposed thigh. She grimaced but extended hand. Aegon seized foreleg spike and hoisted onto saddle behind. "Rhaenys?" she shouted against wind. "Down," he choked. Tears salted. Grief flared gold in her eyes, but a roar from Silence cut the moment short. Euron commanded battered deck, rallying survivors. 4 ships remained afloat, others drifted burning hulks. Dany's fury built. Dracarys. Drogon dived. The Silence's figurehead melted into slag. Flames roared down length. Euron refused to flee. He drew cutlass and leapt from bow onto passing tindercraft, scurrying like demon spider. In conflagration's glare his grin endured, promising more deaths yet. Dany circled, until timber collapsed into steam hiss. She finally turned north toward Dragonstone, Aegon clinging. Drenched, Rhaenys' last cry echoing in bones. Lightning faded behind them, leaving only weeping of wind. At dawn the council gathered, grim with news. Tyrion tallied ships lost and surviving. Davos swore Myrish cell sails nearing the stepstones would rally to them now, seeing Euron bloodied. But Daenerys' face remained carved marble. She dismissed all, until only Aegon and Jon remained. "She saved us," Aegon whispered. "Rhaenys died to spare the realm." Jon nodded, understanding pain deeper than words. Winterfell lost summer and gray wind. Dragons fall too. Dany turned to window where Drogon perched nursing wounded wing. "No more horns, no more stolen magic. We end krakens before they breed." She faced them. "But we strike not from fury. We strike with realm behind us." She clasped their forearms together. "Wolf, dragon, dragon. Swear you will hold this line." They swore. Weeks later, a fleet of 67 hulls, Valyrian triremes, Redwine dramans, Sell-sail roundships, set sail from Blackwater Rush, dragons circling overhead. On deck of Lord Quellan, Asha Greyjoy, freed from Euron's prisons, stood beside Davos plotting tides. "My uncle sinks or kneels," she said. In King's Landing, Sansa coordinated grain caravan departures, signing new coin minted with merged sigil, direwolf entwined with 3-headed dragon encircling 7-pointed star. "Not a crown," she told Tyrion. "A promise." At Winterfell, Bran dreamed roots deep into world's heart, and saw weirwood faces smiling asleep. He whispered to them a question. Could peace sprout where war once trampled? Leaves stirred as though unsure. Beyond the wall, Cersei arrived shivering. Jon met her at Eastwatch Gate, black cloak flapping. She looked at him, almost amused. "The bastard king," she said. "The realm's last judge." He lifted lantern to her face, lines deeper, hair streaked silver, yet her spine unbowed. "No judge," he answered. "Only a man who knows the price of life." She scanned wildling tents, children scampering. "A steep price. Winter teaches." He gestured inside. "Come learn." She snorted but stepped through arch. Sea Clash came at Battle Isle off Old Town. Euron's remnants, stitched with new cell-sail hulls of Volantis, met Dragon Coalition. Dragonfire raked masts. Scorpion bolts lanced sky. On flagship, Arbor Queen, Samwell Tarly. Maester in training, woke courage long smothered. He guided crew to angle mirrors, blinding Scorpion gunners long enough for Drogon's pass. Its flame-enveloped flagship Saffron. Molten bolts rained harmless. Aegon landed on Volantene Dreadhammer, leading boarding rush. Steel rang over decks slick with wine and blood. Euron sought him, laughing through splinters. Their swords met under shattered mizzen. Euron's strength shocking, Aegon's training truer. Yet Horn's residual sorcery pulsed from cutlass. With each parry Aegon felt mind fray. Then Asha burst from smoke, axe cleaving Euron's calf. He roared, shoved her aside, but the distraction gave Aegon opening. He thrust Bright Roar. Sword reclaimed from Casterly cellars, through Crow's chest. Euron spat blood, grin undimmed. Another. Psalm. Then he slid from blade into sea. When last ship burned, horns of victory echoed along Reach Coast. Fisherfolk raised lanterns at night, dancing along dunes. Dragon and wolf banners flew together on Old Town's high tower for first time since Aegon the Conqueror. Months ebbed. Harvest wagons rolled heavier, coin struck bright. The walls breach filled with new black stone mined from Dragonmont, fused by Drogon's breath. Southern lords grumbled about taxes but found trade routes safer than in living memory. One crisp autumn morning, Daenerys rode north to Winterfell for harvest moot. She arrived to crunchy leaves and children chasing crows across courtyard. Jon greeted her outside Godswood. He wore plain wool, Lord of 7 Rivers no more, but Warden of the North and Wall. They walked beneath red leaves. You brought no guards, he observed. Dragons patrol skies, and this is home of friends. He exhaled white mist. We rebuild faster than memory forgets, yet I still wake to snow in my lungs. Dreams of war linger. She agreed. But we are more than war now. They paused before Lyanna Stark's statue. Fall light touched stone cheek as though lending warmth. Jon traced inscription. She loved fiercely and died free. All because Robert kept his promise, he murmured. Daenerys nodded. And because others kept theirs after his strength failed. She turned, eyes bright. Stay for winter feast. He glanced, sky, ravens carving paths to far horizons. I cannot tarry long, but tonight. He met her gaze. I would share a bowl of stew. Later, they sat at long table with Manderley singing bawdy ode. Asha trading jests with Brienne. Sam quoting texts none cared to understand. Bran rolled alongside on wicker chair, smiling faintly as ghosts of weirwoods whispered. Daenerys raised cup of hot cider. To the living. Voices echoed. To the living. Outside, first snowflakes drifted. But for once, they brought no dread. Only promise of hearth warmth to come. Deerwolves howled far off, deep and steady. Overhead, Drogon banked across moon, his roar not of war but of belonging. And beneath ancient roof beams, men and women who once faced end of all things, broke bread, growing loud with laughter that dared to believe peace was possible, if only they fed it every dawn. Years would test that faith. Famine would nip at distant corners, petty lords would scheme, and dragons would not always obey skies drawn by mortal lines. But those winters would find a realm knit by scars into sinew stronger than any forged steel. Tall tales told by tavern fire would speak of a time a stag loved a wolf, and from their tragedy blossomed union of ice and fire that sparked dawn beyond counting. In some far future, a girl chasing snowdrops across Godswood might ask why her dragon wears direwolf harness. And her mother would answer, because once the world almost ended, and the beasts of sky and forest saved it together. The little girl would nod solemnly and run off to play among roots of the ancient heart tree, where stone lady Lyanna stood eternally dancing with petals on cold wind, hearing laughter where once were cries.